Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Psychology, 4th edition. Narrated by Omar Mohsen Ibrahim Fouad. The time now is 7:17 p.m. Today is Sunday, July 12th, 2026. Chapter 11, Personality. Chapter Outline and Learning Objectives. An Introduction to Personality, LO1, Define Personality, LO2, Distinguish how the perspectives of psychology explain personality development, Psychoanalytic Theory, LO3, Illustrate Freud's models for describing the mind, LO4, Summarize Freud's use of psychosexual stages to explain personality, LO5, Explain how the Neo-Freudian theories of personality differ from Freud's. Humanistic Learning and Trait Theories, LO6, Discuss Rogers' view of self-concept, ideal self, and unconditional positive regard, LO7, Use the behavioral perspective to explain personality development, LO8, Summarize Rogers' view of personality, LO9, Discuss Bandura's social cognitive perspective of personality, LO10, Distinguish trait theories from other personality theories, LO11, Identify evidence supporting the biological basis of the 5-factor model of personality tests, LO12, Explain why reliability and validity are important in personality assessment, LO13, Describe projective personality tests and evaluate their strengths and limitations, LO14, Describe objective personality tests and evaluate their strengths and limitations. An Introduction to Personality. Who is Saifa? Sometimes a simple question can change your life. For Sean Saifa Wall, the critical question came in 2007. He was 28 years old and appeared to have his life in order. A graduate of Williams College, Saifa had built an impressive resume, acquired a desirable job, and amassed a large number of social contacts. But he was tormented on the inside, unable to make sense of his thoughts. Saifa felt he was losing control, and he worried that something terrible would happen if he didn't seek help. I was just like either someone's going to kill me or I am going to kill myself. In a move that may have saved his life, Saifa picked up the phone and made an appointment to talk with a psychotherapist. A few days later, he was sitting on the therapist's couch and beginning to unravel his complicated life story. Apparently, the therapist was perceptive because during that first appointment, he posed a question that set Saifa's healing process in motion and changed the course of his life. When did you realize love was not possible? Saifa broke down and began weeping. I don't know, he said. In between tears, the weeping continued for many sessions. For years leading to that moment, Saifa had wrestled with feelings of loneliness, isolation, and self-hatred. He tried to fill the void with new relationships and sex, but the emptiness persisted. I thought that if I just had more sex, that I would eventually be full, Saifa explains. But the more sex I had from all sources, casual sex, relationship sex, pornography, the more miserable and lonely I felt. Saifa's focus on sex was a symptom of something much bigger. For me, sexual addiction is not about sex, Saifa explains. Sexual addiction is me dealing with something that is so visceral and so deep. It's such a well of hurt and shame that some places I can't access. Eyes of Discontent. Sean Saifa Wall was 26 years old when this picture was taken. Looking at this photo today, Saifa sees a young man who is performing masculinity to compensate for feelings of insecurity. This hurt and shame had prevented Saifa from loving himself, but he went to great lengths to attain approval from others. I was trying to impress the women I dated. He explains, I wanted all these material things that I thought would bring me happiness. that would bring me more self-esteem, but the more I got these things, the more I realized I wasn't really happy because I wasn't myself. Like a chameleon, Saifa changed according to the environment. He adjusted his behaviors and roles to please other people. I could be whatever you wanted me to be, he says. Who was the person beneath that chameleon-like exterior, and how did he fall into that crater of self-hatred? Perhaps most importantly, did he ever climb out? Let's start with the first question. Who is Sean Saifa Wall? Note, unless otherwise specified, quotations attributed to Sean Saifa Wall are personal communications.
I think I spent a great deal of my life searching. Where do I fit in? Who am I?
Many theories attempt to explain the development of personality. Some theories emphasize childhood experiences, sexual impulses, and the role of learning in determining personality. Other theories consider factors such as cognition, evolution, and culture. But to really unlock an individual's personality, we need to understand the details of that person's life.
Childhood and adolescence are very formative years in a person's development.
Saifa Wall was born in 1978 with androgen insensitivity syndrome. AIS children are born with conflicting or ambiguous sex organs. As was customary at the time of Saifa's birth, doctors chose the baby's gender. The baby became Suzanne.
The psychosocial note said that the child will be assigned as female and will function as such. But I felt more aligned with a boy gender. My mom let me be a tomboy. Moving through elementary school into middle school and high school, these gender roles became very cemented. My body was starting to develop differently than other little girls.
How would Sigmund Freud have explained the conflicts Saifa experienced as a young person? Freud believed that personality is formed through childhood experiences and suggested that the developing personality progresses through 5 psychosexual stages. Meanwhile, there were further complications in Saifa's life. In the Bronx of the 1980s, crack cocaine and crime were wreaking havoc. Soon, these troubles hit home.
My dad was arrested on October 30th, 1989. That would be the last time that I would see him alive.
More difficulties lay ahead. In middle school, Suzanne began to show signs of male puberty. A deeper voice, facial hair, and more muscle mass.
That was the lowest of my self-esteem. It made me a target for bullying and harassment. And I think I compensated for that by just getting into trouble.
By age 13, Saifa was also experiencing pain in his groin, a possible result of having undescended testes. Doctors in New York City decided to remove the testes and to put Saifa on female hormones, which feminized his face and body.
Afterwards, things just really shifted. I had no sex hormones in my body. Sex hormones is what gives us vitality. No doctors are really sharing with me what's going on. My mom took me to 2 psychiatrists. Eventually, I actually started to see the light again.
In college, Saifa uncovered the fact that he'd been born with AIS.
It was freeing because the truth was unveiled. In another way, oh man, I felt so deceived. If my doctors were more honest about how I was born, it probably would have saved me years of shame. If I were to go back and talk to that child called Suzanne, what I would tell her is that you're unique and you're special.
In his mid-20s, Saifa decided to make the biological and social transition to manhood. He also confronted his relationship with his father, who died in prison of AIDS. Today, Saifa is an advocate for the legal rights of intersex people.
My intersex activism comes from wanting to make this world safer for intersex children and adults. I do believe change is possible. I think I wouldn't be doing the work as an intersex activist if I didn't believe in transformation. Starting in 2007, I started doing collage art. One of the historical figures that I really love is Harriet Tubman. She transgressed the social and physical boundaries.
Saifa appears to demonstrate a high level of self-efficacy, which may have helped him to persevere in difficult situations. Self-efficacy is just one of the many cognitive factors that influence our behavior patterns, as described by psychologist Albert Bandura in his theory of reciprocal determinism. But keep in mind that no single theory can fully account for how we develop our personalities.
I think what shapes my personality is how I see the world, how I interact with the world, how the world interacts with me, and the relationships I have. I really made a commitment to heal, to really address the trauma of losing my father, the shame of being intersex. I looked it in the face, and I think I've been on that journey ever since.
What is personality? LO1 defined personality. If you ask Saifa to describe himself, he will use words like vivacious, loud, charismatic, direct, and empathetic. He might also mention that he has a strong sense of fairness and always leans in the direction of justice. These attributes have been apparent for much of Saifa's life and therefore would be considered facets of his personality. Generally speaking, personality refers to the unique core set of characteristics that influence the way one thinks, acts, and feels. Characteristics many psychologists believe are relatively consistent and enduring throughout the lifespan and in a variety of settings, according to Deal and Wall 2020. We should point out that personality is not the equivalent of character. When people discuss character, they often are referring to qualities of morality or culture-specific ideas about what makes a person good or bad. People who are untrustworthy or make poor choices might be described as having a weak character, while those who stand up for what they believe might be said to have a strong character. You may hear that the guy with the blue mohawk or the woman with the multiple body piercings is a real character. Psychologists try not to make such judgments. Our goal is to describe behaviors and personality characteristics objectively. Unlike character, which is essentially a label based on superficial observations, personality is defined by a core set of characteristics that often become evident in infancy. Temperament. Certain aspects of adult personality appear to derive from temperament, the distinct patterns of emotional reactions and behaviors observed early in life, according to Soto and Tackett 2015, a Tang ETAL 2020. Some infants are easy to calm, others cranky, sociable, or highly reactive. Because various temperaments are evident in infants, they appear to have a genetic basis, according to Plomin ETAL 2013, although behavioral patterns associated with temperament remain somewhat stable across the lifespan. They can be molded by the prenatal and postnatal environment, according to Briley and Tucker-Drob 2014, and Caspi ETAL 2005, Costa ETAL 2019, and Van den Berg ETAL 2020. For example, a child born with a calm, easygoing temperament may become more fearful and irritable if caregivers are neglectful. A child's behavior can shape parental responses too, according to Van den Acker ETAL 2014 and Wittig and Rodriguez 2019. You can imagine how an anxious or defiant child might cause a normally laid-back parent to become irritable. Although temperament shines through early in life, it takes time for adult personality to fully take shape. The exact timing of this process is debated, but we can think of temperament as an important, stable aspect of personality. According to Goldsmith et al. 1987 and Soto and Tackett 2015. Connections. In the Human Development chapter, we describe various infant temperaments. Some of the attending characteristics of these temperaments seem to persist throughout life. Here we introduce temperament in the context of personality development. LO2 distinguish how the perspectives of psychology explain personality development. How can we explain personality? Psychologists use a variety of theoretical perspectives to explain the development and expression of personality. Table 11.1, none of them are perfect, but all provide valuable insights and contribute to our understanding of personality. These theoretical perspectives also help accomplish three of psychology's main goals: to describe, explain, and predict behavior. They have strong ties to their founders, all of whom were influenced by their life experiences and the historical period in which they lived. Sigmund Freud's emphasis on sexuality, for example, was partly a reaction to the prudish Victorian culture into which he was born. Table 11.1, theoretical perspectives on personality. Personality theory, main points, criticism. Psychoanalytic personality develops early in life. We are greatly influenced by unconscious processes, internal conflicts, aggression, and sexual urges, for example. Ignores importance of current experiences, overemphasizes the role of sexuality and the unconscious. Theory is based on a biased, non-representative sample. Concepts are difficult to operationally define and empirically test. Behavioral personality is shaped by interactions with the environment, specifically through learning, operant conditioning, and observational learning. Narrowly focuses on behavioral processes, ignores the influence of unconscious processes and emotional factors. Humanistic, we are innately good and in control of our destinies. A force within moves us toward growth. Concepts are difficult to operationally define and empirically test. Ignores the negative aspects of human nature. Social cognitive focuses on social influences and mental processes that affect personality. Emphasizes the interaction of environment, cognitive activity, and behavior. Narrowly focuses on social cognitive factors, ignores the influence of unconscious processes and emotional factors. Biological emphasizes the physiological and genetic influences on personality development, explains the emergence of certain characteristics through gene-environment interactions. Findings are inconsistent when it comes to the stability of personality dimensions. Estimates of environmental influences are variable. Trait looks at current traits to describe personality and predict behaviors. Underestimates the environmental influences on personality, does not fully explain the foundations of personality. Underestimates the environmental influences on personality, does not fully explain the foundations of personality. Psychology uses a variety of theoretical perspectives to explain the development of personality. Listed here are the major theories and some of their key limitations. Put your heads together. In your group A, pick a character from a fairy tale, TV show, or movie and describe some aspects of their personality. B, now consider these 6 theoretical perspectives presented in Table 11.1 and pick at least 3 of them to explain how these characteristics might have developed. In the next section, we will examine these theories of personality in greater depth. But first, let's take a quick detour somewhere fun. How would you describe your sense of humor? Think critically. The fun thing about personality. Humor takes various forms, but it appears to be a relatively stable personality trait, according to Plesson ETAL 2020, page 1. Some of us rely on humor to connect with other people, cracking jokes and acting silly for their enjoyment. Others use it as a way to cope with challenges. We must admit it does feel good to get loose and laugh when we're feeling overwhelmed. Both of these styles of humor are inversely correlated with anxiety and depression, according to Martin ETAL 2003, and according to Martin ETAL 2003 and Menendez Aller ETAL 2020. This means that people who possess them are less likely to experience symptoms of anxiety and depression. There are also negative forms of humor, like humiliating another person to hurt or manipulate them, or disparaging yourself to amuse others. Preliminary evidence suggests that both of these humor styles may be associated with lower emotion control or the capacity to handle emotions and anxiety, according to D. Fabio ETAL 2023. Who is funnier? Amy Schumer appears on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Have you ever noticed that most famous comedians are men? Perhaps this has something to do with the commonly held and mistaken belief that men are funnier than women. In one study, researchers showed participants cartoon captions written by men and women. Participants unknowingly rated men's and women's captions to be equally funny, but they were more likely to credit the funniest captions to male authors, according to Hooper ETAL 2016 and Kennison 2020b. Where do humor styles originate? According to one large study conducted in Australia, identical twins who have nearly according to one large study conducted in Australia, identical twins who have nearly identical genes are more likely to share humor styles than fraternal, non-identical twins. In fact, the study suggests that 30 to 47% of the population-wide variation in humor styles can be attributed to genetics, according to Bauman ETAL 2012, and some research indicates an even higher proportion, according to Martin and Cooper 2016 and Vernon ETAL 2008. But genes aren't everything, as humor styles tend to shift over time. According to one cross-cultural study, people generally display less negative humor styles as they get older, according to Shermer ETAL 2023. Additional research suggests that couples in long-lasting marriages, those that have endured at least a decade, tend to share similar styles of humor. This could be a result of their humor becoming more alike with time, according to Desai ETAL 2019. What do these findings tell you about the roles of nature and nurture in the development of humor styles? Nearly 8 billion human beings inhabit this planet, and no two of them have the same personality. Each individual's personality reflects a distinct interplay of inborn characteristics and life experiences. Consider this nature and nurture dynamic as you explore the theories of personality in the pages to come. We'll get this discussion going with the help of Seifa. Show what you know. Question number 1. A study concludes that the heritability of humor styles is 30 to 47%. Which perspective of psychology would you use to explain this finding and why? Heritability estimates help us gauge the extent to which genes influence different characteristics in a given population. If the heritability of humor styles is 30 to 47%, that means 30 to 45. If the heritability of humor styles is 30 to 47%, that means 30 to 47% of the population-wide variability for this characteristic can be attributed to genes. The biological perspective of personality development is most relevant in this example because it helps us understand how genetic and physiological factors shape personality characteristics. Question number 2, blank is the unique core set of characteristics that influence the way one thinks, acts, and feels? The answer is personality. Personality is the unique core set of characteristics that influence the way one thinks, acts, and feels. Psychoanalytic theories. Before Saifa, there was Suzanne. Saifa was born in 1978 at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in New York City. Unlike most babies who are readily identified as boy or girl, Saifa had ambiguous genitalia, not clearly male, not clearly female. Doctors assigned him female and instructed his mother to raise him as a girl, indicating that he would function as such, according to Wall 2015, page 118. During that era, many psychologists and medical professionals believed that human behaviors were primarily shaped by environmental input or nurture, according to Schultz 2016 and Siegel 2012. But as you will learn from Saifa's story, nature can sometimes overpower nurture. Saifa was and still is genetically male XY. He has an intersex trait called androgen insensitivity syndrome, AIS, characterized by reduced sensitivity to male hormones or androgens. People with AIS are genetically male, but their bodies do not follow the typical male or female path of sexual development, according to Gottlieb and Trefero 2017 and Singh and Ilyeva 2020. Some are designated male at birth, others female. These gender assignments appear to work out for some people, about 75% according to one study, but a substantial minority feel unsatisfied, according to Schweitzer ETAL 2014. Connections. In the Human Development chapter, we discuss differences of sex development. People with intersex traits may have internal and external reproductive organs that are not clearly male or female. Saifa was raised as a female named Suzanne, but fulfilling society's gender expectations did not come naturally. He didn't like feminine clothes, and he certainly was not attracted to boys. I knew from like the age of 5 that I liked girls, Saifa recalls. His parents accepted this non-conformist approach to girlhood, but within limits. One of Saifa's first memories is from the age of 4 or 5. He was getting ready to visit his grandmother and wanted to wear overalls, but his mom insisted he wear a sundress with spaghetti straps and put his hair in pigtails. Saifa protested and cried, but ended up complying and feeling miserably out of his element. I remember being on the train going downtown and just feeling so vulnerable. Childhood presented other challenges. Saifa grew up in the Bronx during the 1980s when crack cocaine was devastating urban communities and crime was rampant. He witnessed trauma and suffering not only in his neighborhood but also within his family. If we're talking about the most formative experiences I had, if we're talking about between the ages of 0 and 6, Saifa explains, it was seeing my dad drunk, witnessing the domestic violence that took place in the home. Growing up, Suzanne. On the left, 5-year-old Suzanne, now Saifa with friends. When I was growing up, I felt more connected to boyhood, Saifa explains. Innately, I felt more masculine, more male, but externally, what I was presenting to the world based on my body, based on my physical characteristics, was female. How did these early childhood experiences impact Saifa in the long term, and what role did they play in the development of his personality? If we could pose this question to Sigmund Freud, he would probably say they were critical. Freud believed that children is the prime time for personality development, the early years and basic drives being particularly important because they shape our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways beyond our awareness. Psychoanalysis refers to Freud's theories about personality, discussed below, as well as his system of psychotherapy and tools for the exploration of the unconscious. Treatment of Psychological Disorders chapter. Before launching our discussion of Freud, we should point out that this approach is controversial and lacking in scientific support. Freud presented novel and groundbreaking insights on personality development, but his theories are mostly based on isolated case studies that may not be representative of the larger population. Despite these weaknesses, most psychology professors who teach courses in personality recognize the impact of Freud's legacy and teach students about his perspective, according to Posey and Cushing, 2019. Does the mind have three levels? Sigmund Freud spent the majority of his life in Vienna, Austria. A smart, ambitious young man, Freud attended medical school and became a physician and researcher with a primary interest in physiology and later neurology. Freud loved research, but he soon came to realize that the anti-Semitic culture in which he lived would drastically interfere with his studies. Freud was Jewish, so instead of pursuing the career he loved, he opened a medical practice in 1881 specializing in clinical neurology. Many of his patients had unexplained or unusual symptoms that seemed to be related to emotional problems. The basis of these problems, Freud and his colleagues hypothesized, appeared to be sexual in nature, though the patients weren't necessarily aware of this. Freud, 1900 and 1953. Thus began Freud's lifelong journey to untangle the mysteries of the unconscious mind, according to Safran and Hunter, 2020b. LO3 illustrate Freud's models for describing the mind. Freud, 1900 and 1953, proposed that the mind has three levels of consciousness: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious, and that mental processes occurring on these levels guide behaviors and shape personality. Everything you are aware of at this moment exists at the conscious level, including thoughts, emotions, sensations, and perceptions. At the preconscious level are mental activities outside your current awareness, which can easily drift into the conscious realm. The unconscious level is home to activities outside of your awareness. Unconscious feelings, memories, wishes, thoughts, and urges may be very difficult to bring to awareness without concerted effort and/or therapy. Freud did suggest, however, that some content of the unconscious can enter the conscious level through manipulated and distorted processes beyond a person's control or awareness. More on this shortly. To help patients understand the influence of their unconscious activities, Freud, 1900 and 1953, used a variety of techniques such as dream interpretation, hypnosis, and free association. Chapters on consciousness and treatment of psychological disorders, Safran and Hunter, 2020. B. Connections. In the memory chapter, we present a component of working memory called the episodic buffer, which allows information from long-term memory to reach conscious awareness. Although Freud did not refer to this buffer, the preconscious level includes activities similar to those of the episodic buffer. This topographical model, consisting of the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious, was Freud's earliest attempt to explain the bustling activity occurring within the head, according to Weston et al. 2008. Freud was influenced by German physicist Gustav Fechner's 1801 through 1887 idea that the great majority of the mind is hidden below the surface, where it is influenced by unobservable forces, according to Schultz and Schultz, 2016, page 290. Many who describe Freud's model compare it to an iceberg. What we perceive on the surface is just the tip of the iceberg, the conscious level, small in comparison to the vast and influential unconscious mind, according to Schultz and Schultz, 2017, figure 11.1. Extended description for Figure 11.1, Psychoanalytic description of the mind. The illustration depicts a waterline that is separated into three sections labeled as follows. Above the waterline, conscious level, everything you are aware of at the moment. Immediately below the waterline, preconscious mental activity that can easily be brought to awareness. Far below the waterline, unconscious activity well below level of awareness. The iceberg is divided into three unequal pieces and are labeled as follows. Ego monitors demands of ID and superego. The top of the iceberg that lies mostly above the waterline at the conscious level and dips into the water at the preconscious level. Superego internalize the rules, conscious. The side of the iceberg that lies mostly below the waterline at the preconscious level and has a small section above the waterline at the conscious level. ID, psychic energy, impulsive and illogical. The bottom of the iceberg lying almost entirely at the bottom near the unconscious level. Figure 11.1, Psychoanalytic description of the mind. ID, ego, and superego. In addition to the topographical model, Freud proposed a structural model describing the mind's three structures: the ID, ego, and superego, according to Weston et al. 2008. These structures serve as psychic agencies that direct the energy driving our behaviors, according to Safran and Hunter 2020b. The battle among these components occurs unconsciously, influencing our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, and forming our personality, according to Weston et al. 2008. The ID, the most primitive structure of the mind, is the ID. Present from birth, the ID operates at the unconscious level and is responsible for the biological drives motivating behavior. It also fuels the impulsive, illogical, and infant-like aspects of our thoughts and personality. Freud proposed that the ID represents the mind's primary tool of psychic energy, according to Freud 1923 and 1961 and 1933 and 1964. Included in that pool is sexual energy, which motivates much of our behavior. The primary goal of the ID is to ensure that needs are being met, which helps maintain homeostasis. The ID is not rational, and unfulfilled needs or urges compel it to insist on immediate action. It follows the pleasure principle, which guides behavior toward instant gratification and away from contemplating consequences. The ID seeks pleasure and avoids pain. Connections. In the Motivation and Emotion chapter, we discuss the concept of drive reduction, which suggests that unmet needs create tension that motivates behavior. Fulfilling needs reduces tension and helps maintain homeostasis or balance in the body's systems. Here we discuss Freud's view that the ID directs our behavior to meet these needs. The ego, as an infant, grows and starts to realize that desires of the ID cannot prevail in all situations. Their ego, which is not present from birth, begins to develop from the ID. Freud 1933 and 1964 and 1940 and 1949. The ego manipulates situations, creates plans, solves problems, and makes decisions to satisfy the needs of the ID. The goal is to make sure that the ID is not given free rein over behavior, as this would cause problems. Imagine what a busy supermarket would be like if everyone were ruled by their IDs. People would ignore societal expectations to stand in line, speak politely, and pay for food. The store would be full of adults having toddler-like tantrums. To negotiate between the ID and the environment, the ego follows the reality principle, adhering to the rules of the real world and delaying gratification as needed. Freud, 1923 and 1960. The reality principle works through an awareness of potential consequences. The ego can't predict what will happen if we act on an urge. We are aware of the ego's activities, although some happen at the preconscious level and even fewer at the unconscious level. Figure 11.1. The superego. The superego is the structure of the mind that develops last. The superego is the structure of the mind that develops last, guiding behavior to follow the rules of society, parents, and other authority figures, according to Freud, 1923 and 1960. The superego begins to form as toddlers start moving about on their own, coming up against rules and expectations. No, you cannot hit your sister. You need to put your toys away. Children eventually incorporate the value of others, including ideas about right and wrong, often referred to as the conscious. Once the superego is rooted, it serves as a critical internal guide to the values of society so that children can make good choices without reminders from parents, caregivers, or religious leaders. Sometimes, the internal voice of the superego can be harsh and judgmental, and it may set unrealistic standards. For example, people in monogamous relationships may feel guilty when their eyes and imaginations stray toward others who are not their partner. When this happens, their judgmental superego might say, "What's wrong with you? Are you a cheater?" Some activities of the superego are conscious, but the great majority occur at the preconscious and unconscious levels. Caught in the middle, the ego monitors the demands of the ID and the superego, trying to satisfy both. Think of the energy of the ID pushing to get all desires met instantly. The ego must ensure the ID's needs are met in a manner acceptable to the superego, reducing tension as much as possible, according to Safran and Hunter, 2020b. But not all urges and desires can be met, not instantly, perhaps not ever. How might this conflict between the ID and superego play out in a real-world situation? Imagine you are about to leave for class and you get a text from a friend inviting you to a movie. You are torn because you know an exam is coming up and you should not skip today's class. Your ID is demanding a movie, some popcorn, and freedom from work. Your superego demands that you go to class. Clearly, your ego cannot satisfy both of these demands. Freud, 1923 and 1960, proposed that this sort of struggle is an everyday reoccurring experience that the ego cannot always resolve. Sometimes the ID triumphs and the person acts in an infantile, perhaps even destructive manner. You give in to the pressures of your friend and your ID and happily decide to skip class. Or perhaps the superego prevails, causing you to feel a great deal of remorse. Or perhaps the superego prevails, causing you to feel a great deal of remorse or guilt for not living up to some moral ideal. You skip class, but you feel so guilty you can't enjoy the movie. The anxiety associated with the ID superego conflict is generally unconscious, but sometimes it surfaces to the conscious level. The ego then must deal with this anxiety and make it more bearable, perhaps by suggesting that a day off will help you study, because you haven't had any free time all semester. Defense mechanism. If conflicts between the ID and superego cannot be resolved and anxiety becomes overwhelming, the ego may turn to ego defense mechanisms. According to Freud, ego defense mechanisms distort perceptions and memories of the real world without our awareness. Most people unknowingly use defense mechanisms from time to time, but it's generally better to confront problems directly. It can happen to anyone. While speaking at the 2015 fundraiser, then President Barack Obama reportedly said this: "We should be reforming our criminal justice system in a way that we are not incarcerating nonviolent offenders in ways that renders them incapable of getting a job after they leave office." According to Fabian, 2015, paragraph 3. Obama meant to say after they leave prison, and he acknowledged his Freudian slip to a laughing audience. According to Fabian, 2015, a Freudian slip is an unintended word or phrase that accidentally slips off the tongue, shedding light on unconscious thoughts, according to Thefri, ETAL 2023. Freud proposed a variety of defense mechanisms which were further developed by his daughter, psychoanalyst Anna Freud, 1895 through 1982. As you learn about some of these defense mechanisms in Infographic 11.1, remember 2 points. 1, we are often unaware of using them, even if they are brought to our attention, and 2, defense mechanisms are not necessarily a bad thing, according to Kramer, 2015, Remmers, ETAL 2023, and Valent, 2000. In some cases, distortions appear to be helpful because they can reduce anxiety, according to Zimmerman, ETAL 2019. But if we overuse defense mechanisms, behaviors may turn inappropriate or unhealthy, according to Kramer, 2000, 2008, Prunas, ETAL 2019, and Telendini and Kaudik, 2010. Infographic 11.1. Extended description for Infographic 11.1, Ego Defense Mechanism. The text associated with the infographic reads, Ego defense mechanisms. At some point or another, we all experience socially unacceptable thoughts and feelings. What's going on with the ID ego and superego when this happens? The scenario described below, being attracted to someone who is off limits, shows how the dynamic might play out. The impulsive demands of the ID conflict with the moralistic demands of the superego, resulting in anxiety. When that anxiety becomes excessive, the ego works to relieve this uncomfortable feeling through the use of defense mechanisms. According to Freud, 1923/1960, defense mechanisms give us a way to defend anxiety. Defense mechanisms gives us a way to defend against anxiety and negative emotions, but they are not always adaptive or helpful. According to Remmers, ETAL 2023, the scale on the right shows how defense mechanisms can be categorized as ranging from less adaptive to more adaptive, according to Valent, 1992. A vertical scale on the right side of the infographic extends from more adaptive at the top to less adaptive at the bottom. Text boxes along the scale are listed from more adaptive to less adaptive as follows: sublimation, redirecting unacceptable impulses into acceptable outlets. Example, instead of worrying about wanting to date your best friend's boyfriend, you use a dating app to meet other singles. Identification, unconsciously modeling your feelings or actions on the behaviors of someone you admire. Example, admiring your best friend and adapting her mannerisms and characteristics. Displacement, shifting negative feelings and impulses to an acceptable target. Example, being rude to someone who's interested in you. Sorry, I am busy tonight. Repression, anxiety-producing information is pushed into unconscious. Anxiety-producing information is pushed into the unconscious. Example, unconsciously avoiding your friend and her boyfriend in social situations. Rationalization, creating an acceptable excuse for an uncomfortable situation. Example, I am a human being. Of course, I feel sexually attracted to other people. Projection, attributing your own anxiety-provoking thoughts and impulses to someone else. Example, what is wrong with Sarah? She always seems to be checking out other people's boyfriends. Denial, refusing to recognize a distressing reality. Example, I don't like him. He's just not my type. A photo of a man and women hugging points to the scale with a label that reads, "Ego relieves anxiety by employing a defense mechanism." A photo depicts a person anxiously rubbing their neck. Arrows pointing to the person reads, "ID superego, ego." Two thought bubbles attached to arrows point to the ego, representing anxiety. The thoughts are, "I am physically attracted to my best friend's boyfriend. How dare I? I am wrong to feel those impulses." The text below reads, asterisk, "We may get better at dealing with stress and anxiety as we age," according to Martin Joy, ETAL 2017, in a study comparing the use of defense mechanisms in different age groups. Older participants were found to use fewer maladaptive defense mechanisms, according to Siegel, ETAL 2007. One of the more commonly known defense mechanisms is repression, which occurs when the ego moves uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, or memories from the unconscious to the One of the more commonly known defense mechanisms is repression, which occurs when the ego moves uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, or memories from the conscious to the unconscious level. With anxiety-provoking memories, the reality of an event can become distorted to such an extreme that you don't remember it. The repressed memories do not cease to exist, however, and they may pop up in unexpected forms, influencing behaviors and decisions. The repressed memories do not cease to exist, however, and they may pop up in unexpected forms, influencing behaviors and decisions. Connections. In the memory chapter, we discuss the controversy over repressed memories of child abuse. In the memory chapter, we discuss the controversy over repressed memories of childhood abuse. Some psychologists believe that memories can be repressed and retrieved at a later time. Many others question the validity of research supporting the existence of such memories. Freud's case studies describing childhood sexual abuse have also been questioned. Stages of development. LO4 summarize Freud's use of psychosexual stages to explain personality. In addition to his topographical and structural models of the mind, Freud, 1905 and 1953, proposed a developmental model to explain how personality is formed through experiences in childhood, with a special emphasis on sexuality. According to Freud, the development of sexuality and personality proceeds through psychosexual stages, which all children experience as they mature into adulthood, according to Table 11.2. Driving this development is the sexual energy of the ID. Children are sexual beings starting from birth, indicating there is a strong biological component to personality development. Each psychosexual stage is associated with a specific erogenous zone or area of the body that provides more sexual pleasure than other areas. Along with each psychosexual stage comes a conflict that the individual must resolve in order to become a well-adjusted adult. If these conflicts are not successfully addressed, one may develop a fixation, that is, get stuck in a particular stage and fail to progress smoothly through the remaining stages. Freud believed that fixation in a psychosocial stage during the first 5 to 6 years of life can last into adulthood, and this may have a dramatic impact on personality. Let's look at each stage, its erogenous zone, and conflicts, and some consequences of fixation. Oral stage. The oral stage begins at birth and lasts until 1 to 1.5 years old. As the name suggests, the erogenous zone for the oral stage is the mouth. Infants derive their greatest pleasure from sucking, chewing, and gumming. According to Freud, the conflict during this stage generally centers on weaning. Infants must stop nursing or using a bottle or pacifier, and the caregiver often decides when it's time. Weaning too early or too late can have long-term consequences for personality development. Freud suggested that oral fixation is associated with certain personality traits and behavior patterns, which might include smoking, nail biting, excessive talking, and increased alcohol consumption. Oral fixation. The average baby, birth to 18 months, spends 108 minutes per day sucking on a pacifier and another 33 minutes mouthing other objects, according to Juberg et al. 2001. Freud identified this phase of life with the oral stage of psychosexual development. Anal stage. Following the oral stage is the anal stage, which lasts until about age 3. The erogenous zone is the anus, and pleasure is derived from eliminating bodily waste and learning to control the process. The conflict during this stage centers on toilet training. Parents want their child to use a toilet, but the child is not necessarily ready. Once again, how caregivers deal with this task may have long-term implications for personality. If a parent is too harsh, growing angry when they are not if a parent is too harsh, growing angry when they are If a parent is too harsh, growing angry when there are accidents, forcing a child to sit on the toilet until they go, or too lenient, making excuses for accidents, not really encouraging the child to learn control, the child might grow up with an anal retentive personality, rule-bound, stingy, or an anal expulsive personality, chaotic, destructive. Phallic stage. Ages 3 to 6 mark the phallic stage. Phallus means penis in Latin. During this period, the erogenous zone is the genitals, and many children begin to discover that self-stimulation is pleasurable. Freud's 1923 work, cited from the 1960 edition, assigned special importance to the conflict that occurs in the phallic stage. During this time, little boys experience the Oedipus complex. They develop a desire to replace their fathers, a normal feeling according to Freud, but one that leads to jealousy because the boy considers his father a rival for his They develop a desire to replace their fathers, a normal feeling according to Freud, but one that leads to jealousy because the boy considers his father a rival for his mother's affection. When the boy becomes aware of his attraction to his mother, he realizes his father is a formidable adversary. When the boy becomes aware of his attraction to his mother, he realizes his father is a formidable adversary and feels angry toward him. He also begins to fear his powerful father and worry that he might be punished. Specifically, he fears that his father will castrate him. According to Freud's 1917 work, cited from Freud's 1966 edition. In order to reduce the tension, the boy must identify with and behave like his father, a process known as identification. This defense mechanism resolves the Oedipus complex. This defense mechanism resolves the Oedipus complex, allowing the boy to take on or internalize the behaviors, mannerisms, morals, and standards of his father. The boy realizes that sexual affection should only be between his father and mother, and the incest taboo develops. Freud's 1923 work, cited from the 1960 edition, believed that little girls also experience conflict during Freud's 1923 work from the 1960 edition believed that little girls also experience conflict during this period. Feeling an attraction to their fathers, they become jealous and angry toward their mothers. They also realize that they do not have a penis, which leads to feelings of loss and jealousy, known as penis envy. The girl responds with anger, blaming her mother for her missing penis. Realizing she can't have her father, she begins to act like her mother through the process of identification. She takes on her mother's behaviors, mannerisms, morals, and standards. Some of Freud's followers labeled this conflict the Electra complex, according to Kilmartin and Dervin, 1997, and Schultz and Schultz, 2017. If children do not resolve the sexual conflicts of the phallic stage, they develop a fixation, which can lead to flirtation, vanity, overdependence, bravado, and an increased focus on masturbation. Latency period. From age 6 to puberty, children go through a latency period, not a stage according to Freud's definition, as there is no erogenous zone, conflict, or fixation. During this time, psychosexual development slows and sexual energy is repressed. Although children develop mentally, socially, and physically, their sexual development is on hold. Genital stage. Following the calm of the latency period, a child's psychosexual development regains speed. The genital stage begins at puberty and marks a reawakening of sexuality. The erogenous zone is once again the genitals, but now in association with relationships as opposed to masturbation. The Oedipus or Electra complex is resolved, and the individual often becomes attracted to partners who resemble the opposite sex parent, according to Freud's 1905 work cited from the 1953 edition. Because of the ever-present demands of the ID, unconscious conflicts persist, including the continual battle against hidden sexual and aggressive urges. If such conflicts are resolved, then it is possible to thrive in adult experiences such as work and love. Table 11.2, Freud's psychosexual stages. Stage, age, erogenous level, focus, type of conflict, results of fixation. Table 11.2, Freud's psychosexual stages. Stage, oral, age, birth to 1.5 years, erogenous zone, mouth, focus, sucking, chewing, and gumming, type of conflict, weaning, results of fixation, smoking, drinking, nail biting, excessive talking. Stage, anal, age 1.5 to 3 years, erogenous zone, anus, focus, eliminating bodily waste and controlling bodily functions responsible for this process. Type of conflict, toilet training, results of fixation, being rule-bound, stingy, chaotic, destructive. Stage, phallic, age 3 to 6 years, erogenous zone, genitals, focus, sexual feelings, and awareness of self. Type of conflict, self-stimulation, results of fixation, promiscuity, flirtation, vanity, or overdependence, and a focus on masturbation. Latency period, 6 years to puberty, period during which children develop mentally, socially, and physically. Genital, puberty and beyond. Genitals, reawakening of sexuality with focus on relationships, sexuality and aggression, inability to thrive in adult experiences such as work and love. According to Freud, psychosocial and sexual development proceeds through distinct stages. Each stage is characterized by a certain pleasure area or erogenous zone and a conflict that must be resolved. If resolution is not achieved, the person may develop a problematic fixation. Who are the Neo-Freudians? A dark period, young childhood was difficult for Saifa, who faced an ongoing conflict between his innate sense of gender and society's expectations for him as a girl, but the early years were also a time of great freedom. When I was like 5, 6, 7, I was the adult that I am now. Saifa says, I was very uninhibited. I was very loud. I was very free. I was weird. Life took a dramatic turn when police showed up at his building and took away his father. Saifa, 10 years old, observed the whole event. That's the last time I saw him alive. He was being taken away in handcuffs while Saifa's mother dealt with the aftermath. Saifa went to live with his mother. While Saifa's mother dealt with the aftermath, Saifa went to live with his sister in North Carolina, where she was relentlessly bullied at his new school. I think living in North Carolina just really killed my fire as a child, Saifa says. I was still that quirky, weird, loud kid. I think living in North Carolina just really killed my fire as a child, Saifa says. I was still that quirky, weird, loud kid, but then I was teased, I was bullied, my self-esteem was really low. A year or two after moving to North Carolina, Saifa began to experience puberty. His voice deepened, he began growing facial hair, and his muscles became more defined. All changes associated with male puberty, but Saifa was still a girl at this point. Recall that he had been assigned female at birth and raised as Suzanne. The masculinization of his body was fueled by testosterone from his undescended testes. People with AIS may be born with internal as opposed to descended testes. I was experiencing this male puberty, Saifa says, but it felt normal, it felt good. The male puberty Saifa enjoyed came to an abrupt halt at age 13 when he moved back to New York City and doctors removed his testes. The purpose of the operation was to eliminate the pain he had been feeling in his groin, possibly the result of hernias in his testes. The other reason, doctors told Saifa's mother, was that the internal gonads would likely become cancerous. This procedure has since become a subject of controversy, as the risk of cells becoming cancerous or even precancerous is low among children and teens going through puberty, according to Druning ETAL 2020. What's beneath that smile? Saifa, 18 years old, poses for his high school graduation photo on the left and a portrait with his older sister. After doctors removed his internal testes, Saifa fell into a deep depression. I didn't comb my hair, I didn't brush my teeth, I didn't shower. Saifa explains, it was so bad, I wouldn't even go outside. Following the surgery, Saifa Following the surgery, Saifa's doctor put him on female hormones, which feminized his face and body. The doctors wanted to create this feminine body that was going against what my body was naturally doing. I was developing with both male and female characteristics, and that's what makes my particular intersex trait so beautiful. Saifa says the right to my body was taken away from me. According to Freud, personality is largely shaped by early childhood experiences and sexual impulses. Yet, some of the most transformative experiences in Saifa's life, the arrest of his father, the bullying at school, and the surgery to remove his testes, occurred later in life and had little to do with sexual urges. Some theorists would argue that such events are important factors in personality development. We now turn to the Neo-Freudians, who agree with Freud on many points but depart from his intense emphasis on early childhood experiences, aggression, and sexuality. LO5 explained how the Neo-Freudians' theories of personalities LO5 explained how the Neo-Freudians' theories of personality differ from Freud. Drifting apart, Freud's psychoanalytic theory was quite controversial, but he did have a following of students who adapted some central aspects of his theory. Erik Erikson, for example, considered himself a loyal Freudian, yet he took Freud's ideas in a new direction. According to Schultz and Schultz 2017, Erikson suggested that psychosocial development occurs throughout life and proceeds through 8 stages, each marked by a conflict between the individual's needs and society's expectations. His approach was more positive than Freud's, drawing attention to lifelong personal growth in His approach was more positive than Freud's, drawing attention to lifelong personal growth in His approach was more positive than Freud's, drawing attention to lifelong personal growth in psychologically health people. According to Ludden 2021, Erikson was not the only one to disagree with Freud on key points. Those who broke away and developed their own theories are often referred to as Neo-Freudians. Neo equal new. Connections. In the Human Development chapter, we discuss Erikson's psychosocial stages, building on the views of Erikson suggested that every developmental stage is marked by a task or emotional crisis that must be handled successfully for healthy psychological growth. Alfred Adler, one of the first followers to forge his own path, was a fellow Austrian physician. Alfred Adler, 1870 through 1937, whose theory conflicted with Freud's notions of child sexuality and male superiority. Adler believed some parts of the mind exist outside of his awareness, but not permanently, as they can be brought forth with guidance. According to Ludden 2021, humans are not just pleasure seekers, but conscious and intentional in their behaviors. We are motivated by the need to feel superior, to grow, overcome challenges, and strive for perfection. This drive originates during childhood, when we realize that we are dependent on and inferior to adults, according to Wertheimer and Puente 2020. Whether imagined or real, our sense of inferiority pushes us to compensate, so we cultivate our special gifts and skills. This attempt to balance perceived weaknesses with strengths is not a sign of abnormality, but a natural response. Adler's theory of individual psychology focuses on each person's unique struggle with feelings of inferiority. Unfortunately, not everyone is successful in overcoming this sense of helplessness and dependence. Those who fail may develop what is known as an inferiority complex, according to Adler's 1927 work, cited from the 1994 edition. People with people with an inferiority complex feel incompetent, vulnerable, and powerless, and cannot achieve their full potential. Adler was also one of the first to theorize about the psychological repercussions of birth order. That is, how people are affected by their place in the family, first, middle, or youngest child. He believed that firstborn children experience different environmental pressures than youngest and middle children, and these pressures can set the stage for the development of certain personality traits, according to Ansbacher, 1956, and Hartman and Goodarzi, 2019. Didn't see that coming, how birth order may or may not affect your personality. Firstborns are conscientious and high achieving. They play by the rules, excel in school, and become leaders in the workforce. Youngest children are favored and coddled by their parents and grow up to be gregarious and rebellious. Middle children tend to get lost in the shuffle, but they learn to be self-sufficient. Have you heard these stereotypes about birth order and personality? How well do they match your personality? How well do they match your personal experience? And do you think they are valid? If you search the scientific literature, you will indeed find research supporting such claims. According to one analysis of 200 studies, firstborns, as well as only children, are often accomplished and successful. Middle children are sociable, but tend to lack a sense of belonging, and last-born children are agreeable and rebellious, according to Eckstein et al. 2010. Other research indicates that firstborns are more likely than later-born children to be green consumers, meaning their purchases tend to be environmentally conscious, according to Otterbring and Fulwer-Sunsi, 2022. These findings are intriguing and may seem consistent with our everyday observations, but many of them are correlation in nature. These findings are intriguing and may seem consistent with our everyday observations, but many of them are correlational in nature. Remember, a correlation is just a relationship between variables, not an establishment of cause and effect. Like all research, birth order studies are vulnerable to confounding variables, and designing studies to circumvent them has proven difficult. When researchers have been able to control some of these variables, birth order does not strongly correlate to the presence of any specific personality characteristics, according to Botzet et al. 2021, Damien and Roberts 2015, and Raurer et al. 2015. This means that we can't make broad generalizations about people based on where they fall in the family's birth order. As psychologist Frank Spinath explained in an interview with Scientific American, it is quite possible that the position in the sibling sequence shapes the personality, but not in every family in the same way. In other words, there may be an influence, but not a systemic one, according to Hartman and Goodarzi, 2019, paragraph 9. Research connections. In Chapter 1, we discussed what it means to have a confounding variable. A confounding variable is a type of extraneous variable that changes in sync with an independent variable, IV. This makes it difficult to discern which variable, the IV or the confounding variable, is causing changes in the dependent variable. Carl Gustav Jung, Neo-Freudian Carl Gustav Jung, according to Jung, 1875 through 1961, was a Swiss psychiatrist who emphasized growth, self-understanding, and the spiritual aspects of human nature. Jung claimed that Jung claimed that Freud viewed the brain as an appendage to the genital glands. according to Weston ETAL 2008, page 66, and proposed that personality development is not limited to childhood but evolves throughout life. His analytic psychology de-emphasized the biological urges, sex and aggression, and proposed that we are driven by psychological energy, not sexual energy, that promotes growth, insight, and balance, according to Jung, 1969. According to Jung, personality is made up of the personal conscious that is within our awareness, as well as a personal unconscious and a collective unconscious, according to Ludden, 2021. The personal unconscious is akin to Freud's notion of the preconscious and the unconscious mind. It contains material that is readily available, easy to retrieve memories, and material that is very difficult to access. The personal unconsciousness. The personal unconscious is akin to Freud's notion of the preconscious and the unconscious mind. It contains material that is readily available, easy to retrieve memories, and material that is very difficult to access, repressed memories, and other anxiety-provoking content. The collective unconscious holds the universal experiences of humankind passed from generation to generation, memories that are not easily retrieved without some degree of effort or interpretation. We inherit a variety of primal images, patterns of thought, and storylines. The themes of these archetypes may be found in art, literature, music, dreams, and religions across time, geography, and culture. Some of the consistent archetypes include the nurturing mother, powerful father, innocent child, and brave hero. Archetypes provide a blueprint for responding to objects, people, and situations, according to Jung, 1969. Jung also proposed that every personality has both feminine and masculine elements, respectively known as the anima and animus, and both should be acknowledged and appreciated. Timeless heroines. Scarlett Johansson, on the left, plays the role of Natasha Romanoff in the 2021 film Black Widow. Her strength, bravery, and charisma resemble those of 15th century French heroine Joan of Arc, portrayed in the poster on the right. These heroines have the qualities of a Jungian archetype. The thoughts and feelings they evoke are relatively consistent across time and culture. Extended description for timeless heroines. The first illustration depicts Scarlett Johansson posing with swords attached to her back, with the movie logo reading Black Widow. The second illustration depicts Joan of Arc wearing armor and standing over a raging battle. Arrows fly through the air around her as she carries a banner with a sword at her side. Karen Horney, 1885 through 1952. Karen Horney, 1885 through 1952, was a German psychoanalyst who immigrated to the United States in the early 1930s. She agreed with Freud that the early years play an important role in shaping adult personality, and that conflict arises between individual desires and the needs of society, according to Schultz 2017, and Tamala Nara 2016. But rather than focusing on erogenous zones and psychosexual stages, Horney emphasized the role of social environment, particularly the family. She believed that inadequate parenting can create feelings of helplessness and isolation or basic anxiety. According to Horney, 1945, Horney suggested that people deal with this anxiety using 3 strategies: moving toward people, looking for affection and acceptance, moving away from people, looking for isolation and self-sufficiency, or moving against people, looking to control others. A balance of these three strategies is important for psychological stability and healthy personality development. According to Kaufman, 2020, a strong critic of Freud's sexist view of the female psyche, Horney pointed out that women are not just. Horney pointed out a strong critic of Freud's sexist view of the female psyche. Horney pointed out that women are not just jealous of the penis itself, but rather what it represents in terms of power and status in society. Horney's 1926 work, cited from the 1967 edition, also proposed that boys and men can envy women's ability to bear and breastfeed children. Table 11.3. In many respects, Horney was ahead of her time. Not only did she resist the sexist culture that dominated the field, she recognized that children need to feel secure in their relationships with caregivers, a key concept of attachment theory according to Ludden, 2021. Table 11.3, the Neo-Freudians. Alfred Adler rejected Freud's notion that personality is primarily shaped by unconscious processes. Adler's individual psychology suggests that personality is strongly influenced by the drive to conquer feelings of inferiority. Birth order plays a role in personality development. Carl Gustav Jung agreed with Freud that unconscious processes are critical to personality development, but did not share his focus on sexuality and aggression. Jung's analytic psychology emphasized the importance of growth, self-understanding, and spiritual development over the lifespan. Personality is made up of the personal conscious, the personal unconscious, and the collective unconscious. Karen Horney agreed with childhood is an important time for personality development, but dismissed his sexist approach. Relationships between children and caregivers are paramount, and poor parenting can lead to helplessness and isolation or basic anxiety. Men envy women's ability to bear and breastfeed children. Not all of Freud's students completely embraced his approach. Alfred Adler, Carl Gustav Jung, Karen Horney, and others branched off on their own theoretical paths. Freud's legacy is complicated. Freud's psychoanalytic theory was groundbreaking, and it led to a variety of extensions and permutations through neo-Freudians such as Erikson, Adler, Jung, and Horney. His work is considered among the most important in the field of personality development, but his legacy extends far beyond. According to Wertheimer and Puente, 2020, although some of his ideas had already been expressed by others, Freud brought them together in a unified theory, according to Ludden, 2021. He called attention to the existence of infant sexuality at a time when sex was a forbidden topic of conversation, recognized the importance of infancy and early childhood in the unfolding of personality, and appreciated the universal stages of human development. Psychoanalysis helps us understand that the self has depth, that the complexity of the psyche and of human existence are not an impediment to living a good life, but are the source of our identity, according to Strenger, 2015, page 304. Despite these key contributions and some evidence that Freud's system of psychotherapy works for certain people, many scientists consider Freud's work to be unscientific, according to Horgan, 2017. Freud's theories are virtually impossible to prove wrong and be used to explain Freud's theories are virtually impossible to prove wrong and can be used to explain most any human behavior. According to Shea and D, both characteristics of pseudoscience, Chapter 0, Stanovich, 2019. Had Freud's theory been more amenable to scientific study, perhaps they would have earned him a Nobel Prize in physiology or medicine. He was nominated 12 times, but never granted his high honor, according to NobelPrize.org 2009 and Shaw 2016. Critics also contend that Freudian theory fails to appreciate the importance of development beyond childhood, overemphasizes the role of sexuality, and places too much weight on the unconscious forces guiding behavior. Critics also contend that Freudian theory fails to appreciate the importance of development beyond childhood, overemphasizes the role of sexuality, and places too much weight on the unconscious forces guiding behavior. His theory is based on a biased, non-representative sample consisting of middle and upper income Viennese women and himself. Finally, Freud's theory is male-centered and assumes that women are inferior in their character development and should accept their passive position in a world that is male-dominated, according to Tamala Nara, 2016, page 18. Connections. In Chapter 1, we introduced a form of descriptive research called the case study. Freud's case studies, and all case studies, are based on isolated cases rather than representative samples. Therefore, their findings cannot be generalized to the larger population. Show what you know. Question number 1. Freud's blank includes 3 levels: consciousness, preconsciousness, and unconscious. Question number 1. Freud's blank includes 3 levels: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. Is the answer A, structural model of the mind, B, developmental model, C, individual psychology, or D, topographical model of the mind? The answer is D, topographical model of the mind. Freud's topographical model of the mind includes 3 levels: conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. Question number 2. According to Freud, all children go through blank stages as they mature into adulthood. If conflict are not resolved, a person may develop a blank. The answer is psychosocial and fixation. According to Freud, all children go through psychosexual stages as they mature into adulthood. If conflicts are not resolved, a person may develop a fixation. Question number 3. How did the theories of the Neo-Freudians differ from Freud's psychoanalytic theory with regard to personality development? Answers will vary, but could include the following. Some of Freud's followers branched out on their own due to disagreements about certain issues, such as his focus on his instincts of sex and aggression, his idea that personality is determined by the end of childhood, and his somewhat negative view of human nature. Adler proposed that humans are conscious and intentional in their behaviors. Jung suggested that we are driven by a psychological energy. As opposed to sexual energy, which encourages positive growth, self-understanding, and balance. Horney emphasized the role of relationships between children and their caregivers, not erogenous zones and psychosexual stages. Humanistic learning and trait theories. Humanistic learning and trait theories. On a positive path after Seyfried's tests were removed and he began taking female hormones, doctors expected or hoped he would blossom into a lovely young woman, but as Seyfried recalls, I did not succumb to the pressure to be more feminine, but actually gravitated toward masculinity, according to Wall, 2015, page 118. He excelled in school and eventually became a leader at Williams College, spearheading campus demonstrations against police brutality and anti-gay hate crimes. A few years after graduating, Seyfried decided to make the biological and social transition to manhood. He changed his name to Sean Seyfried Wall, began taking testosterone, and underwent a double mastectomy. Saifa had assumed control of his body and his life like never before, yet he could not shake the feelings of loneliness and self-hatred. To do this, he would need to confront a lifetime of trauma, which included the loss of his father, first to prison and then to AIDS, and life-changing medical interventions that occurred before he was old enough to give informed consent. Saifa courageously faced these traumas by going to psychotherapy and enrolling in a 12-step recovery program for sex education. Since then, Saifa has been on a journey to heal himself and help others through his writing, public speaking, and work with Rooted in Research, a company he founded. Saifa has established himself as a leading intersex activist. In 2016, he co-founded the Intersex Justice Project, IJP, which seeks the end of medically invasive and unnecessary surgeries in the United States that target intersex children and adolescents by empowering intersex people of color to advance that change. According to IJP ND paragraph 1, we had our first protest in front of Lurie Children's Hospital in October 2017, and less than 3 years later, in July 2020, Lurie Children's Hospital was the first hospital in the United States to issue an apology for the harm that was caused to intersex people and declared a moratorium on intersex genital surgeries for 6 months, says Saifa. There were some caveats Saifa did not support, but he considers it a step in the right direction. More recently, Saifa was featured in Everybody, an acclaimed documentary film that celebrates intersex bodies and activism. I've definitely been on this journey, Saifa says, looking forward about how I change the world around me, but also this inward journey of how I can change the world within me. Everybody is beautiful. Saifa advocates for the legal rights of children with intersex traits, accepting myself as intersex, and advocating for intersex people and children. I really put forward that our bodies are our mosaic, Saifa says. There is no such thing as a normal body. This variation is what makes us as a species beautiful. Saifa is now in his 40s and seems to have reached a point of self-acceptance and love. I still have more work to do and more growing to do as well. As we all do, he says, but I can see that I have returned to that child of like 7 who is just in the world totally free. The brighter side, Maslow and Rogers, a humanistic theorist, might say that Saifa's drive to grow and improve is and has always been the main focus shaping his personality. Leading humanists such as Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers believed that people are innately good and in control of their destinies, and these positive aspects of human nature drive the development of personality. This perspective began gaining momentum in the 1960s and 1970s in response to the negative mechanistic view of human nature apparent in the psychoanalytic and behaviorist theories. Thus, humanism is often referred to as the third force in psychology, according to Ludden, 2021. Connections the behaviorists presented in the learning chapter were only interested in measuring observable theories. They suggested that our behaviors are shaped by input from the environment, and thus we are at the mercy of forces beyond our control. The humanists challenged this position. Maslow and personality. Some consider Abraham Maslow to be the single person most responsible for creating humanistic psychology. According to Moss 2015, page 13, as a humanist, Maslow believed that psychologists should study human creativity, growth, and healthy functioning, not just mental illness and maladaptive personality traits. He was particularly interested in self-actualizers, or people who are continually seeking to reach their fullest potential, according to Compton 2018, table 11.4. Connections in the Motivation and Emotion chapter, we present Maslow's hierarchy of needs. According to Maslow, behaviors are motivated by both psychological and physiological needs. These needs, according to Maslow, behaviors are motivated by both physiological and psychological needs. These needs are considered universal and are ordered according to the strength of their associated drives. In addition to contributing to our understanding of motivation, Maslow helped propel psychology's humanistic movement. Table 11.4, are you a self-actualizer? Tendencies, characteristics, example. Realistic perceptions, non-judgmental, objective, and acutely aware of others, an individual who is empathetic and unbiased. Acceptance of self, others, and nature, patient with weaknesses of self, others, and society, someone who is accepting of others. Spontaneity and creativeness, original, flexible, and willing to learn from mistakes, someone who is self-sufficient, flexible, and spontaneous, independent and private, not reliant on others, able to enjoy time alone, a person with a strong sense of self, who doesn't need approval from others. Peak experiences, has moments of ecstasy and transcendence, a highly spiritual individual who experiences intense happiness in day-to-day activities. Social interest and fellowship, empathetic and sympathetic towards others, a person who is devoted to helping others, autonomous and resistant to enculturation, independent and free from cultural pressures, an individual who is self-sufficient and resists social pressure. According to Maslow, self-actualizers are people who continually strive to achieve their maximum potential. Listed here are common traits and examples of self-actualizers. Perhaps some of these qualities characterize you. Information from Schultz and Schultz 2017. According to LO6, discuss Rogers' view of self-concept, ideal self, and unconditional positive regard. Rogers and personality. Like Maslow, Carl Rogers had great faith in the essential goodness of people and their ability to make sound choices. According to Rogers, 1979, humanistic theory was espoused by many in Rogers' era, but he was able to synthesize its ideas into a coherent theory of personality and create a new client-centered approach to psychotherapy, according to Ludden 2021. According to Rogers, we all have an innate urge to move towards situations and people that will help us grow and move away from those that could inhibit growth. This tendency toward self-enhancement begins in infancy and continues throughout life. According to Murphy and Joseph 2016, we should trust our ability to find happiness and mental balance that is to be fully functioning, and strive to actively experience life. According to Rogers, at the same time, we must also be sensitive to the needs of others. Rogers highlighted the importance of self-concept, which refers to knowledge of one's strengths, abilities, behavior patterns, and temperament. Problems arise when the self-concept is incongruent with or does not correspond to a person's experiences in the world, according to Rogers, 1959. If an individual believes they are kind and sociable, but they fail to get along with most people in their life, this incongruence will produce tension and confusion. Rogers also proposed that people often develop an ideal self, which is the self-concept they fervently strive to achieve. As suggested above, problems emerge when the ideal self is unattainable or incongruent with the self-concept, according to Rogers, 1959. We discussed this topic further in the treatment of psychological disorders chapter. Like Freud and Horney, Rogers believed caregivers play a vital role in the development of personality. Ideally, caregivers show unconditional positive regard or total acceptance of children regardless of their behavior. According to Rogers, people need to feel totally accepted and valued for who they are, not what they do. Caregivers who place too much emphasis on rules, morals, and values, ignoring children's innate goodness, can cause them to experience conditions of worth. In other words, children feel loved by their parents only if they act in accordance with their wishes. Although Rogers and Maslow are often credited with founding humanistic psychology, others had a chance in shaping this emerging discipline. For example, Belgian-born U.S. psychologist G. Marion Kinget, 1910 through 1997, was an instructor and a scholar who taught some of the first classes and wrote one of the first books of humanistic psychology, yet her name is not included in many historical accounts. Perhaps a result of her gender and humble approach to scholarship, according to Bodner 2023 and Maruk 2023. Too much of a good thing. Schitt's Creek character Maura Rose, played by Catherine O'Hara, may not be the most attentive mother, but she adores and showers praise on her son David Dan Levy. Constant praise and other attempts to boost a child's self-esteem might foster narcissism, but researchers suggest this outcome can be avoided. The development of self-esteem without narcissism can be cultivated through realistic feedback rather than inflated praise, a focus on growth rather than on outperforming others, and unconditional regard rather than regard that is conditional, according to Brummelman and Sedekides 2020, page 83. Humanistic theories. What's the takeaway? The humanistic perspective has led to a more positive and balanced view of human nature, influencing approaches to parenting, education, and research. Its legacy is alive and well in the emerging field of positive psychology, according to Seligman 2019. From psychotherapy to research on human strengths and optimal functioning, we can observe a resurgence of the humanists' work in the field, according to De Robertis 2016. Connections. In Chapter 1, we described positive psychology as a relatively new approach. The humanists' optimism struck the right chord with many psychologists who wondered why the field was not focusing on human strengths and virtues. Despite its far-reaching and positive impact, the humanistic approach has limitations for humanistic and psychoanalytic theories alike. Creating operational definitions can be challenging. How can you use the experimental method to test a subjective approach whose concepts are open to interpretation, according to Schultz and Schultz 2017? Imagine submitting a research proposal that included two randomly assigned groups of children. One group whose parents were instructed to show them unconditional positive regard, and another group whose parents were told to instill conditions of worth. The proposal would never amount to a real study, not only because it raises ethical issues, but also because it would be impossible to control the experimental conditions. And while it is important to recognize that humans have great potential to grow and move forward, we should not discount the development. And while it is important to recognize that humans have great potential to grow and move forward, we should not discount the developmental impact of early experiences. Finally, some have argued that the humanistic approach almost ignores the negative aspects of human nature evident in war, greed, abuse, and aggression, according to Berger 2015. This may be partly true, but some humanistic psychologists are inspired by the challenges presented by This may be partly true, but some humanistic psychologists are inspired by the challenges presented by humanity's darker side, according to Stern 2016 page XII. Next, we will explore how personality is influenced by forces in the outside world. How do you think your interactions with the environment have shaped your personality? Can personality be learned? Nana lives on. Many years have passed since Saifa's therapist asked him the crucial question: when did you realize love was not possible? Even today, these words strike Saifa in a deep and vulnerable place, but he no longer falls apart, perhaps because he knows that love is possible. There is no doubt he pours love into the world, advocating for the rights of intersex children and others who don't fit neatly into society's male and female gender categories. For those in his close circle, Saifa demonstrates love by cooking and hosting, making sure they are comfortable and happy. He learned these nurturing behaviors from his grandmother, who passed away in 2003. One of my role models was my Nana, Saifa says. She didn't really talk much. She was kind of shy, but she was an amazing cook. Preparing meals and cleaning were the ways she expressed her love. To speak to her history, she was a domestic worker for most of her life, so that's what she knew. Saifa explains. She showed her love by doing rather than saying. L07 used the behavioral perspective to explain personality development. Saifa's caretaking behaviors have been shaped by years of observational learning, watching and following his role model, Nana. These same behaviors have been strengthened through operant conditioning. When Saifa's friends praise the meals he makes, this provides positive reinforcement for his cooking and nurturing. These learned behaviors follow a predictable pattern and therefore constitute part of Saifa's personality. According to the behavioral perspective, personality is shaped by a lifetime of learning. As you may recall, personality is the core set of characteristics that influence the way one thinks, acts, and feels. The behaviorist perspective focuses on just one of those elements, the way a person acts. Behaviorists view personality as a collection of behaviors, all of which have been shaped through learning. Each person develops under a different or unique set of stimulus conditions, and consequently his resulting personality becomes uniquely his own, according to London 1963, page 265. This perspective offers valuable insights. This perspective offers valuable insights on personality development, but does it overstate the importance of behavior? Critics contend that behaviorism is too simplistic. It ignores everything that is not directly observable and assumes that humans are passive and unaware of what is going on in their internal and external environments. L08 summarized Rotter's view of personality, looking beyond behavior. U.S. psychologists Julian Rotter, 1916 through 2014, was an early social learning theorist who examined the ongoing dynamic between humans and their surroundings. Rotter believed that personality is the interaction between a person and his or her environment, and is dependent on a particular individual's learning experiences and life history, according to Strickland, 2014, page 546. Rotter also suggested that some aspects of personality cannot be directly observed. According to Rotter, 1990, he proposed several cognitive aspects of personality, including locus of control and expectancy. Locus of control refers to a pattern of beliefs about where control or responsibility resides. People with an internal locus of control believe that the causes of life events generally reside within them, and that they have some control over those causes. Such individuals would be inclined to say that their career success depends on how hard they work, not on luck. For example, Rotter, 1966, those with an external locus of control generally believe that causes of events reside outside of them. They assign great importance to luck, fate, and other features of the environment they cannot control. Getting a job occurs when circumstances are just right and luck is on their side. According to Rotter, 1966, A person's locus of control refers to beliefs about the self, not about others, and it may change in response to stressors, according to Nowicki et al. 2019. Ryder also explored how personality is influenced by thoughts about the future. Expectancy refers to the predictions we may make about the outcomes and consequences of our behaviors. According to infographic 11.2, suppose you have a bad meal at a restaurant. Your decision to let it go or confront the manager is based on expectancy. Do you believe complaining will lead to a free meal, or do you expect to be treated like a scam artist who doesn't want to pay the bill? In these situations, there is an interaction among expectancies, behaviors, and environmental factors. L09 discussed Bandura's social cognitive perspective of personality, beliefs, behavior, and environment. Albert Bandura also challenged the behaviorist approach, rejecting the notion that psychologists should only focus on observable behavior, according to Bandura 2006. His social cognitive perspective suggests that personality results from reinforcement, relationships, and other environmental factors, social, and patterns of thinking. Cognitive. Our personalities are shaped by experience, and our cognitive abilities and knowledge partly result from interactions with others, according to Bandura 1977b 2006. Bandura also pointed to the importance of self-efficacy, which refers to beliefs about our ability to. Bandura also pointed to the importance of self-efficacy, which refers to beliefs about our ability and effectiveness in reaching goals, according to Bandura 1977a 2001. People who exhibit high self-efficacy often achieve greater success at work because they are more likely to be flexible and open to new ideas, according to Bandura 2006. Those who demonstrate low self-efficacy generally believe they will not succeed in a particular situation regardless of their abilities or experience. Beliefs about self-efficacy are influenced by experience and may change across situations. Generally speaking, people who believe they can change and progress are more likely to persevere in difficult situations, including those presented by college, according to Stajkovic et al. 2018. Self-efficacy tends to grow as we succeed in our endeavors. I have tackled through challenges before and witnessed similar others do the same. If they can do it, so can I, according to Bandura and Cherry 2020. The power of self-efficacy. Fashion model Jillian Mercado has muscular dystrophy, but she hasn't let her disability stand in the way of her career. Mercado, who has appeared in ad campaigns for Diesel and Beyonce, seems to have a high level of self-efficacy or belief in her ability to reach goals. As she has said, having a disability doesn't stop me from doing anything. It's an honor and a privilege to show people that it's okay to be yourself and still do what you love. United Nations 2019, paragraph 3. Beliefs play a key role in our ability to make decisions, solve problems, and deal with life's challenges. The environment, in turn, responds to our behaviors. In essence, we have internal forces, beliefs, expectations, directing our behavior, external forces, reinforcers, punishments, responding to those behaviors, and the behaviors themselves influencing our beliefs and the environment. Beliefs, behavior, and environment form a complex system that determines our behavior patterns and personality. Infographic 11.2, according to Bandura 1978-1986, refers to this multi-directional interaction as reciprocal determinism. Let's consider an example showing how reciprocal determinism might work. A student harbors a certain belief about themselves. I am going to graduate with honors. This belief influences their behavior. They study hard and reach out to instructors, which affects their environment. Instructors take note of their enthusiasm and offer support. Their ambition and determination result from an ongoing interaction among cognition, behaviors, and the environment. Infographic 11.2, the social cognitive perspective on personality. Extended description for infographic 11.2, the social cognitive perspective on personality. The introductory text reads, social cognitive theorists, projected behaviorists, exclusive on observable behavior, acknowledging that personality may be shaped through learning. Social cognitive theorists such as Albert Bandura also emphasized the roles of cognition and environmental influences on behavior. Bandura's theories of reciprocal determinism shows how cognition, behaviors, and the environment all interact to determine our personality. The top part shows a rightward arrow with 3 dots. The first dot represents good job, and accompanying text reads, child is praised for reading quietly. The second dot represents a silhouette of 3 stars, and accompanying text reads, child receives attention for effort in school. The third dot represents a silhouette of graduation cap, and accompanying text reads, child is rewarded for school achievement. Text besides the arrow reads, behaviorists believe personality is the compilation of behaviors shaped through a lifetime of learning. A child who receives reinforcement for studying and effort in school will repeat this behavior, eventually exhibiting the personality characteristic studious. The first section, labeled cognition, shows a photo of a female graduate with a thought bubble that reads, I succeed because I am a studious person. Text beside the photo reads, thinking about behaviors and what they have led to in the past creates expectancies, predictions about what future outcomes will result from a behavior. When we recognize that past efforts to study usually resulted in good grades, when we recognize that past efforts to study usually resulted in good grades, we will expect that studying will lead to good grades in the future. Bandura calls this learned expectation of success self-efficacy. The second section, labeled environment, shows a photo of students sitting on a field outside a college building. Text below reads, the environment can include the college you choose, the major you select, the classes you enroll in, and also the culture where you are a student. For example, in Chinese classrooms, struggle is assumed to be part of the learning process. However, in Western classrooms, struggle is often seen as a sign of lower ability, according to L.I. 2005 and Schleppenbach, ETL 2007. The culture you live in, your environment, can influence how you think about your own skills and behaviors, and how hard you work at something that is difficult for you. The third section, labeled behavior, shows a photo of a woman sitting at a desk with a pen and a book. Text beside the photo reads, reinforced behaviors become more consistent over time. When an instructor praises our participation in class, that reinforcement will lead us to participate again. We also learn by observing others' behaviors. If our classroom form a study group that helps them better understand the material, we may learn to adopt that technique. An arrow from cognition to environment reads, expectancies influence the environment you seek out. A bubble call-out reads, I will apply to college because I can succeed there. An arrow from cognition to behavior reads, expectancies influence behavior. A bubble call-out reads, I get good grades when I study, so I will continue to do this. An arrow from environment to cognition reads, environment influences expectancies. A bubble call-out reads, I am in college, so I know I can handle a busy schedule like other college students. An arrow from environment to behavior reads, environment influences behavior. A bubble call-out reads, I'm a college student now, so I need to spend more time studying. An arrow from behavior to cognition reads, prior experiences create expectancies. A bubble call-out reads, when I study, I get good grades. An arrow from behavior to environment reads, behavior influences environment. A bubble call out reads, I study hard and am a successful student, so I've chosen to go to college. Social cognitive theories, what's the takeaway? Social cognitive theories, what's the takeaway? The social cognitive theorists were among the first to realize that we are not just products of our environment, but dynamic agents capable of altering the environment itself. Personality is shaped by an ongoing interplay of cognitive expectancies, behaviors, and the environment. The focus on research and the test table hypothesis provides a clear advantage over the psychoanalytic and humanistic theories. Some argue that these approaches minimize the importance of unconscious processes and emotional influences, according to Schultz and Schultz 2017 and Weston 1990. But overall, the inclusion of cognition and social factors offers valuable ways to study and understand personality. What are personality traits? Earlier in the chapter, we used some words to describe Seifa's personality: vivacious, loud, charismatic, direct, and empathetic. All these might be considered examples of traits, the relatively stable properties that describe elements of personality, unlike the theories presented thus far, which focus on how and why personality develops. The trait theories center on describing personality and predicting behaviors. LO10 distinguished trait theories from other personality theories. Allport identifies 4,504 traits. One of the first trait theorists was U.S. psychologist Gordon Allport, 1897 through 1967, who compiled a comprehensive list of traits to describe personality. The goal was to operationalize the terminology used in personality research, as researchers need to agree on definitions when studying the same topic. Suppose two psychologists are investigating a trait called vivacious. They will have an easier time comparing results if they use the same definition. Allport and his colleague carefully reviewed Webster's New International Dictionary 1925 and identified 17,953 words among some 400,000 entries that were descriptive of personality or personal behavior. Allport and Odbert, 1936, page 24. The list contained terms considered personal traits, such as acrobatical and zealous, temporary states, woozy and thrilled, social evaluation, swine and outlandish, and words that were metaphorical and doubtful, mortal and middle-aged. Most relevant to personality were the personal traits, of which they identified 4,504, a little over 1% of all entries in the dictionary. Surely this long list could be condensed, reduced, or classified to make it more manageable. Enter Raymond Cattell. Cattell narrows the list. British-born psychologist Raymond Cattell, 1905 to 1998, proposed grouping the long list of personality traits into two major categories: surface traits and source traits. According to Cattell, 1950, surface traits are the easily observable personality traits, characteristics commonly used to describe people. According to Josie, is quiet, Amir is friendly. Source traits are the foundational qualities that give rise to source traits. For example, extroversion is a source trait, and the surface traits it produces may include warm, gregarious, and assertive. There are thousands of surface traits, but only a few source traits. Cattell, 1950, proposed that source traits are the product of both heredity and environment, nature and nurture, and surface traits are the combined action of several source traits. Page 34. Cattell also condensed the list of surface traits into a much smaller set of 171. Realizing that some of these surface traits would be correlated, he used a statistical procedure known as factor analysis to group them into a smaller set of dimensions according to common underlying properties. With factor analysis, Cattell was able to produce a list of 16 personality factors or dimensions. These 16 factors can be considered primary source traits. Figure 11.2. Connections in Chapter 1, we described a correlation as a relationship between two variables. Here we mention factor analysis, which examines the relationships among an entire set of variables. Figure 11.2, Cattle's 16 personality factors. Raymond Cattle produced personality profiles by measuring where people fell along each of these 16 dimensions, or personality factors. The ends of the dimensions represent polar extremes, reserved versus outgoing. For example, information from Cattle 1937b and Cattle ETAL 1970. Eysenck proposes three traits. Hans Eysenck 1916 through 1917. A German-born psychologist, continued to develop our understanding of social traits. Hans Eysenck 1916 through 1997. A German-born psychologist, continued to develop our understanding of source traits, proposing three personality dimensions: introversion, extroversion, E, neuroticism, N, and psychoticism, P. People high on the extroversion end of the introversion, extroversion, E dimension tend to display a marked degree of sociability and are outgoing and active with others in their environment. Those on the introversion end tend to be quiet and careful and enjoy time alone. Having high neuroticism, N, typically goes hand in hand with being restless, moody, and excitable, while low neuroticism means being calm, reliable, and emotionally stable. People high on the psychoticism dimension tend to be cold, impersonal, and antisocial, while those at the opposite end of this dimension are warm, caring, and empathetic. The psychoticism dimension is not related to psychosis described in the psychological disorders chapter. In addition to identifying these dimensions, Eysenck worked diligently to unearth their biological basis. For example, he proposed a direct relationship between behaviors associated with the introversion-extroversion dimension and the reticular formation, according to Eysenck 1967. According to Eysenck 1967, 1990, introverted people display higher reactivity in their reticular formation. Because they have higher arousal levels, introverts are more likely to react to stimuli and thus develop certain coping patterns. Being more careful or restrained, for example, an extrovert has lower levels of arousal and thus is less reactive to stimuli. Extroverts seek stimulation, so they tend to be more impulsive and outgoing. Connections in the biology and behavior chapter, we describe the reticular formation, a network of neurons responsible for levels of arousal by sifting through sensory data headed toward the cortex. The reticular formation helps you selectively attend to important information and ignore what's relevant. Eysenck suggested that the reticular formation is also associated with the introversion-extroversion dimension of personality. Eysenck contributed a great deal to our understanding of personality, but he has been accused of serious scientific misconduct. Scholars have alleged he manipulated data, engaged in unethical collaboration with the tobacco industry, and systematically and repeatedly published false science. Marks 2019, page 409, Pelosi 2019. Some journals have retracted Eysenck's papers. Others have issued statements conveying concern, but his research continues to be cited, according to O'Grady 2020. This controversy is ongoing and important to keep an eye on. The theories of Allport, Cattle, and Eysenck paved the way for the trait theories commonly used today. Let's take a look at one of the most popular models. LO11 identify evidence supporting the biological basis of the five-factor model personality. The five-factor model of personality, also known as the Big Five, is a current trait approach for explaining personality. McCrae and Costa 1987, McCrae ETAL 2013, Soto 2019. This model, developed using factor analysis, indicates there are five factors or dimensions to describe personality. There's not complete consensus on the names for these factors, but trait theorists generally agree on the following labels: 1. Openness to experience. 2. Conscientiousness. 3. Extroversion. 4. Agreeableness. And 5. Neuroticism, according to Narrated and McClakick 2017, McCrae ETAL 2013, and Soto 2019. Openness is the degree to which a person is willing to try new experiences. Conscientiousness refers to one's organizational tendencies and attention to detail. The extroversion and neuroticism dimensions are similar to those proposed by Asenik. Extroversion refers to degree of sociability. Extroversion refers to degree of sociability and outgoingness, while neuroticism connotes emotional stability, the extent to which a person is calm, secure, and even-tempered. Agreeableness indicates how trusting and easygoing a person is. To remember these factors, students sometimes use the mnemonic ocean: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Figure 11.3. Figure 11.3, the five-factor model of personality. The mnemonic ocean will help you remember these factors. The five factors are as follows: openness, conforming bidirectional to unconforming, uncreative bidirectional to creative, practical bidirectional to imaginative; conscientiousness, unreliable bidirectional to reliable; lazy bidirectional to ambitious; spontaneous bidirectional to punctual; extroversion, loner bidirectional to sociable; quiet bidirectional to talkative; reserved bidirectional to affectionate. Extroversion, loner bidirectional to sociable; quiet bidirectional to talkative; reserved bidirectional to affectionate. Agreeableness, rude bidirectional to good-natured; uncooperative bidirectional to trusting; critical bidirectional to helpful; neuroticism, calm bidirectional to emotional; even-tempered bidirectional to temperamental; secure bidirectional to worried. Empirical support for this model has been established using cross-cultural testing with people in more than 500 cultures exhibiting these five dimensions, according to Alec ETAL 2017, McCrae ETAL 2000, McCrae ETAL 2005, and McCrae ETAL 2010. The five-factor model of personality appears to be a universal aspect of human nature, according to McCrae ETAL 2013, page 17. One possible explanation for these cross-cultural similarities is that the five dimensions are rooted in biology, according to Alec and McCrae 2004 and McCrae ETAL 2000. That is, they are influenced by genes, brain structures, and other biological factors, not just culture and experience, according to Karwowski and Labuda 2016 and Vercelli ETAL 2017. In fact, 3 decades of twin and adoption studies point to a genetic basis for the five factors, according to Boomsma ETAL 2018, McRae ETAL 2000, and Yamagata ETAL 2006. With openness to experience showing the greatest degree of heritability. According to McRae ETAL 2000, Table 11.5, heritability is the degree to which heredity is responsible for a particular characteristic or trait in the population. Connections. The Cognition, Language, and Intelligence chapter describes twin studies which indicate that genes play an important role in intelligence. Identical twins share 100% of their genes at conception. Fraternal twins share about 50% of their genes, and adopted siblings are genetically very different. Comparing personality traits among these siblings can show the relative importance of genes and the environment. Table 11.5, heritability and the Big Five. Big Five personality dimensions. Heritability. Openness, 0.61. Conscientiousness, 0.44. Extroversion, 0.53. Agreeableness, 0.41. Neuroticism, 0.47. Listed here are heritability estimates for the Big Five personality characteristics. Heritability is the degree to which heredity is responsible for a particular characteristic in the population. Information from Boomsma, ETAL 2018, and Jang, ETAL 1996. Further evidence for the biological basis of the 5 factors comes from longitudinal studies which suggest that these characteristics are generally stable over time for periods as long as 40 years, according to Candler, ETAL 2010, McRae, ETAL 2000, 2013, and Teresiano, ETAL 2006. This implies that nature shapes personality more than nature. This implies that nature shapes personality more than nurture. The environment does play a role, however. This is evidenced by the fact that the 5 factors and the characteristics associated with them may change over the lifespan, according to Sakaki, ETAL 2018, and Specht, ETAL 2011. As people age, they tend to score higher on conscientiousness, according to Deal and Wall, 2020. They also seem to become happier and more easygoing as the years go by, displaying more positive attitudes, according to Marsh, ETAL 2013. Additional support for the biological underpinnings of the 5 factors comes from animal studies. For example, researchers have found that some squid respond to stimuli boldly or aggressively, while others act more shyly, according to Sin and Mohsen 2005, page 105. Could this mean squid display different degrees of extroversion and introversion? Others suggest that dog personalities can be described using dimensions such as aggression and attention seeking, according to MacLean, ETAL 2019, and Panisi, 2019. Though contrary to popular belief, breed is not a good predictor of dog behavior, according to Morrill, ETAL 2022. Researchers have studied many species, and a variety of animals seem to display personality characteristics that resemble those observed in humans, according to Sin and Mohsen 2005, and Weiss, ETAL 2017. Animals with personality. There appears to be some overlap in the personality traits observed in humans, killer whales, and chimpanzees. According to Goldman, 2019, some of these traits appear to be associated with longevity. For example, a study of chimpanzees found that males rated high in agreeableness, the personality trait characterized by low aggression and positive social interactions, such as cooperation, tend to live longer than their less agreeable peers, according to Altschul, ETAL 2018, page 2. Traits are us. Personality traits impact human life in ways you may find surprising. Would you believe that politicians with less agreeable personalities are more likely to prevail? As disheartening as it sounds, sometimes nice guys finish last, according to Jolie ETAL 2019. Another aspect of personality, conscientiousness, has been associated with certain measures of success, including income level and life satisfaction, according to Duckworth ETAL 2012. Even the personality traits of the people in your life may impact you. One study suggests that marrying a conscientious person could benefit your career. Conscientious spouses support their partner's professional lives by taking care of household chores and by modeling conscientious behavior. For example, according to Solomon and Jackson 2014. How might such information be useful in everyday life? His traits, her traits. Males and females appear to differ with respect to 5 factors. Although there is not total agreement on how, a review of studies from 55 nations reported that across cultures, females score higher on conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism, according to Schmidt ETAL 2008. Males, on the other hand, seem to demonstrate greater openness to experience. These disparities are not extreme, however, according to Weinschenk ETAL 2022, the variation within males and females is greater than the differences between the sexes. Larger distinctions emerge when broad personality traits are broken down into sub-traits or facets. For example, males and females are relatively close in their levels of extroversion, but they may differ on certain elements of extroversion. Males tend to be more assertive, while females tend to be more sociable and friendly, according to Kaufman 2019, December 12th, paragraph 7. Would you predict that females are on average more sociable and friendly? Research suggests that some gender stereotypes do indeed contain a kernel of truth, according to Costa ETAL 2001, Cajonius and Johnson 2018, and Teresiano ETAL 2005. Let's find out if this is the case for cultural stereotypes as well. Across the world, does culture influence personality? Have you ever heard someone say that people in the United States are overly devoted to their careers, are obsessed with football, and drive big cars? These kinds of assumptions rest on what psychologists might call national stereotypes or preconceived notions about the personalities of people belonging to certain cultures. Are such stereotypes accurate? To get to the bottom of this question, a group of researchers used personality tests to assess the big 5 traits of nearly 4,000 people from 49 cultures. When they compared the results of the personality tests to national stereotypes, they found no evidence that the stereotypes mirrored reality, according to Teresiano ETAL 2005. Subsequent research supports this conclusion, according to McRae ETAL 2013, though some scholars question the validity of the Big 5 across all cultures, according to Lajaj ETAL 2019. The bottom line is that national stereotypes are potentially inaccurate, and the type of thinking that drives them may have far-reaching political consequences, according to Sirp and Carner 2017, paragraph 3. How do you think these stereotypes might impact relationships between nations or between host countries and their immigrant communities? Trait theories, what's the takeaway? As evidenced by the example above, trait theories have facilitated research that sheds light on issues that might appear unrelated to psychology, like politics. Trait theory research can also lead to new insights on psychological phenomena, including psychological disorders. For For example, we can understand personality traits as existing on a continuum with normal traits at one end and those associated with disorders at the other. According to DeYoung, ETAL 2016, this approach may help combat the stigma associated with mental illness because it reveals that we all share these traits to some extent. Like all perspectives in psychology, trait theories have limitations. One major criticism is that they fail to capture the nuances of personality. Suppose you have a group of people who are equivalent with respect to all 5 factors, yet each individual has a unique personality. The nuanced variations response for these distinctions are still being investigated, according to Modis, ETAL 2019. Trait theories may also be limited in their ability to explain the origins of personality, what aspects of personality are in it, and which are shaped by the environment. How do unconscious processes, motivations, and development influence personality? Another issue with trait theories is their tendency to underestimate environmental influences on personality. As Austrian-born U.S. psychologist Walter Mischel, 1930 through 2018, pointed out, external circumstances can affect the way traits manifest themselves. According to Mischel and Schoda, 1995, an individual who is high on the openness factor may be non-conforming in college, but after they join the military, their non-conformity assumes a new form. Critics also contend that the samples used in some Big 5 cross-cultural studies are not representative. If most of these study participants are college students, for instance, the sample is not necessarily representative of the larger population. Finally, there is some debate over whether the 5-factor model applies to all non-industrialized cultures. According to Gervin, ETAL 2013, van der Linden, and Dunkel, ETAL 2018. Time to wrap up our discussion of the trait theories and move on to the intriguing topic of personality assessment. How do psychologists evaluate personality? What do these tests reveal? And can we be confident in the results? Show what you know. Question number 1. Total acceptance of children regardless of their behavior is known as A. Conditions of worth. B. Repression. C. The real self. D. Unconditional positive regard. The answer is D. Unconditional positive regard. Total acceptance of children regardless of their behavior is known as unconditional positive regard. Question number 2. According to personality is a compilation of behaviors that have been shaped via reinforcement and other forms of learning. The answer is learning theory. According to learning theory, personality is a compilation of behaviors that have been shaped via reinforcement and other forms of learning. Question number 3. Julian Rotter proposed several cognitive aspects of personality, including one's beliefs about where responsibility or control exists. Is the answer A, reinforcement, B, locus of control, C, expectancy, or D, reinforcement value? The answer is B, locus of control. Julian Rotter proposed several cognitive aspects of personality, including locus of control, or one's beliefs about where responsibility or control exists. Question number 4, name the Big 5 traits and give one piece of evidence for their biological basis. Answers will vary. Also refer to table 11.4. The Big 5 traits are openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. 3 decades of twin and adoption studies point to a genetic and therefore biological basis of these 5 factors. The proportion of variation in the Big 5 traits attributed to genetic makeup is substantial, ranging from 0.41 to 0.61. suggesting that the remainder can be attributed to environmental influences. Question number 5, the relatively stable properties that describe personality are, is the answer A, traits, B, expectancies, C, reinforcement values, or D, ego defense mechanisms? The answer is A, traits. The relatively stable properties that describe personality are traits. Question number 6, reciprocal determinism refers to a complex, multi-directional interaction among beliefs, behavior, and environment. Draw a diagram illustrating how reciprocal determinism explains one of your behavior patterns. Answers will vary, but can be based on the following definition, also referred to infographic 11.2. Reciprocal determinism refers to multidirectional interactions among cognition, behaviors, and the environment, guiding our behavior patterns and personality. Personality tests. To assess personality, psychologists rely on both subjective and objective tests. Subjective assessments are based on intuition, clinical judgment, opinion, and interpretation of question responses, dreams, and other personal material. Objective assessments are less influenced by opinions, personal beliefs, expectations, and values because they are administered and evaluated using standardized procedures. Both approaches have strengths and limitations, which we will explore in the pages to come. But first, let's get a handle on the qualities that render these tests effective: reliability and validity. Are they reliable and valid? LO12 explain why reliability and validity are important in personality assessments. Reliability can refer to two aspects of an assessment: test, retest. Reliability is how consistent results are when the same person takes the test more than once. Your score should not change significantly from today to tomorrow on measures of personality. We wouldn't expect aspects of your personality to change from day to day. Iterator reliability refers to the degree of consistency across people scoring an assessment. With high iterator reliability, results are the same regardless of who scores the test, according to Lane ETAL 2023. Validity is the other important quality of a personality test. A valid test is one that measures what it intends to measure. Let's say a psychologist develops an assessment for extroversion. In order for the test to be considered valid, it must yield results that are similar to already established and valid assessments of extroversion. If the test can predict future scores on other measures of extroversion, this would indicate it has predictive validity. Connections. In the Cognition, Language, and Intelligence chapter, we discuss ways to determine the reliability of intelligence tests. In addition to test, retest reliability, we can split a test in half to determine if the findings of the two halves agree. This type of reliability can be determined with personality assessments as well. Career connections, personality tests at work. Personality assessments are used in many contexts with profound implications. Psychologists use them to get to know their clients and diagnose mental disorders. Companies and government entities may enlist psychologists to administer these tests to job applicants, according to Moyle and Haxton, 2018, and Trent ETAL 2020. Does this person have what it takes to be a manager? For more information on the different roles psychologists play, refer to the online appendix, Careers in Psychology. Personality tests may also take place in legal settings as one of many assessments used to evaluate the functioning of parents in custody disputes. For example, according to Neal ETAL 2019 and Terry and Leslie 2022, is the parent depressed? Can they take care of this child? Personality tests are not only used to describe personality, mental health professionals may use them to identify symptoms and behaviors related to disorders, according to the Psychological Disorders chapter. Do you understand why it's so important for these tests to be valid and reliable? In the next section, we will explore the major types of personality assessments used by psychologists, interviews projective personality trait. In the next section, we will explore the major types of personality assessments used by psychologists, interviews, projective personality tests, and objective personality tests. Many of these are aligned with specific perspectives, psychoanalytic or behavioral, for example, but most psychologists use an integrative approach drawing on multiple perspectives. What brings you here today? Psychologists can gather a great deal of information about clients in face-to-face interviews. An unstructured or open-ended interview has no predetermined path and may begin with a question such as, "What brings you here today?" From there, the psychologist may gently direct the conversation in a way that helps uncover aspects of the client's personality. Semi-structured and structured interviews, on the other hand, employ specific paths of questioning that hinge on the respondent's answers, according to Madel 2023. This format provides a more systematic means of comparing personality characteristics across individuals. Connections. When conducting interviews, psychologists must keep in mind that memories are malleable, a concept discussed in the memory chapter. They should avoid posing questions that might lead to the misinformation effect or the tendency for new or misleading information to distort memories. Tell me about yourself. Psychologists assess personality using a variety of tools, including interviews. These face-to-face sessions range from open-ended and exploratory to highly structured. One advantage of the interview is that it allows a psychologist to visit with a client in a relatively natural, realistic setting. Talking with a client face-to-face, a psychologist can observe facial expressions and body language, which may offer clues about what's going on inside. There are drawbacks, however. Interview subjects may lie to the interviewer, in some cases without even realizing it, spin the facts to misrepresent themselves, or share memories that are distorted or incomplete. Another possible source of error is the interviewer. Sometimes interviewers unknowingly lead the conversation in a particular direction or interpret responses in a way that reinforces their beliefs about personality. Clients can also be influenced by interviewers' nonverbal language. Finally, the wording of questions can have a profound influence on the answers obtained. For example, asking someone, "Are you happy in your marriage?" versus "Are you happy in your marriage?" may not elicit the same response. Connections. In Chapter 1, we discussed a form of descriptive research known as the survey method. With the survey method, information is gathered using questionnaires or interviews administered on paper in face-to-face interviews or with digital technologies. The wording of survey questions may be biased, which can influence the way people respond. This same problem can arise with personality assessments. What do you observe? Projective tests. LO13 describe projective personality tests and evaluate their strengths and limitations. It's a hot summer day and two friends are lying in the park gazing at the clouds. "What do you see?" asks one friend. "I see the profile of a puppy." The other replies, "That's funny." That's funny, says the first. "I see a clump of grapes." It's a hot summer day and two friends are lying in the park gazing at the clouds. "What do you see?" asks one friend. "I see the profile of a puppy." The other replies, "That's funny," says the first. "I see a clump of grapes." How can two people look at the same image and come away with such different impressions? Some would argue that it has a lot to do with personality. The idea that personality influences perception is the premise of projective personality tests. With psychologists, the idea that personality influences perception is the premise of projective personality tests, which psychologists use to explore characteristics that might not be accessible through interview or observation. Infographic 11.3, a person taking a projective test is presented with an ambiguous stimulus and then projects meaning onto it. The assumption is that people harbor anxiety and unresolved conflicts, often unconsciously, that may come out in their responses. The test administrator takes the manifest content. The test administrator takes the manifest content, what the person reports seeing, and tries to understand its underlying meaning. Because these tests attempt to gather information indirectly, they are less threatening than other methods and therefore provoke less resistance. The Rorschach ink blots. The best known projective personality test is the Rorschach, originally developed by Swiss psychiatrist Hermann Rorschach, 1884 through 1922. Today, psychologists typically use Rorschach ink blots with comprehensive coding systems, according to Bornstein 2022 and Exner 1986. Here's a rough description of how the test is administered. A psychologist hands a client a series of cards covered in odd-looking blotches of ink, 5 black and white, 5 in color, presenting the cards one by one. The psychologist asks the client to report what they see. The images they describe and the details they report will be systematically compared to answers given by other test takers who have been identified as having certain personality characteristics and diagnosis. Does the person see bears playing patty cake? Seeing animals in motion might be interpreted as a sign of rashness. Are they concentrating on the black areas? This could suggest a feeling of melancholy or sadness, according to Lilienfeld et al. 2005. The thematic apperception test, TAT, developed in the mid-1930s by Henry Murray and his colleagues. The thematic apperception test, TAT, consists of 20 cards showing black and white illustrations of ambiguous scenes. Test takers are asked to tell a story about each card. These stories typically describe the people pictured, including their emotions and thoughts, an explanation of the events leading up to the scene, and a conclusion to the story. The TAT is based on the premise that test takers project underlying conflicts onto the ambiguous stimuli. The test administrator's job is to unearth those conflicts. Infographic 11.3, examining the unconscious projective personality test. An introductory text reads, "The psychoanalytic perspective holds that some aspects of personality exists beneath conscious awareness. Projective personality tests seek to uncover these characteristics. Ideas and anxieties in the unconscious will appear in descriptions of ambiguous stimuli, revealing previously hidden conflicts that the test administrator can evaluate." The first section is titled Test Administration. A photo shows several cards with different thematic content. Text below the photo reads, The standard administration of the TAT presents a selection of 5 to 12 cards. The participant is asked to tell a story for each scene, including what the characteristics. The participant is asked to tell a story for each scene, including what the characters are feeling and how the story might end. Text beside the photo reads, the best known projective tests, the thematic apperception test, TAT, and the Rorschach inkblot test are both conducted in the same way. According to Lilienfeld et al. 2005, the test administrator presents a series of picture cards, one at a time, then records The test administrator presents a series of picture cards, one at a time, then records the participants' responses. The administrator also notes behaviors such as gestures, tone of voice, and facial expressions. 3 cards of symmetrical ink blots are shown on the right side of the text. Text below reads, the Rorschach has 10 cards with symmetrical ink blots, 5 in color and 5 in black and white. The participant is prompted to give multiple responses for each image, identifying details. The second section is titled Test Interpretation. Accompanying text reads, to help decrease the influence of administrator bias in interpretation of projective tests, comprehensive systems have been developed to standardize scoring and interpretation of some tests. For the Rorschach ink blot test, responses are coded on dimensions such as location, whole ink blot or one detail, themes, unique or consistent, and thought processes. According to Erdberg 1990, the use of a comprehensive system allows administrators to compare typical and atypical responses. A section titled Participant Responses shows a black and white ink blot. Various responses are listed alongside. They read as follows. Looks like 2 people. The people are fighting over something, or they are carrying something heavy together. Maybe it's one person looking in a mirror. I also see a butterfly. A call out, as the bottom reads. These sample responses are representative of this type of ink blot, according to Burstein and Lukes, 1989. A section titled Examiner Responses shows a list of examiner responses as follows. A participant mentions the typical response of 2 figures. Suggestion that the people are fighting could indicate issues with aggression or an aggressive personality. Focus on individuals working together could represent a need for social connection. However, seeing one person alone could indicate social anxiety. Now, participant switches to a specific part of the image, which could also show that he is uncomfortable thinking about others, perhaps related to introversion. Projective personality tests. What's the takeaway? Perhaps the greatest strength of projective tests is their unstructured format, which allows test takers to speak openly, honestly, and freely. But these tests are time-consuming, and the process of scoring and interpreting their results is somewhat subjective. As noted in other chapters, humans are prone to a variety of biases and cognitive errors that can interfere with their ability to accurately assess people and situations. Test administrators may score differently, and test takers may get inconsistent results when they take the test on different occasions. Thus, projective tests may lack both iterator and test-retest reliability. The comprehensive scoring system for the Rorschach ink blots has resolved some reliability concerns, but the issue of validity remains. Many critics suggest that projective tests are not valid because they do not measure what they claim to measure, according to McGrath et al. 2023. For these reasons, projective tests should be used cautiously, especially in non-clinical situations such as job interviews. Connections. In the Cognition, Language, and Intelligence chapter, we note that people are prone to the hindsight bias, or the I knew it all along feeling. The hindsight bias is just one type of bias that can interfere with personality assessment and other forms of data collection. You may not have Rorschach ink blots at your disposal, but surely you use other tools to size up the personalities of new people. Perhaps you observe the way they interact with others, or how much they tolerate uncertainty. Did it ever occur to you that the social media might be a good place to look for clues? Didn't see that coming. A picture is worth 1,000 words. What does your Instagram reveal about your personality? According to one study, people who frequently post images of pets tend to score low on a measure of social. According to one study, people who frequently post images of pets tend to score low on a measure of sociability. Could this mean they prefer to surround themselves by animals rather than people? According to A.B. Cooper, et al. 2020, page 969. Another study found that Instagram users with delicate self-esteem tend to post selfies that emphasize physical appearance, according to Barry et al. 2017, but this finding has been hard to replicate, according to Barry et al. 2019. X, formerly known as Twitter, can offer clues about personality too. People who are high in conscientiousness tend to select profile photos that convey positive emotions, a picture of themselves smiling. Meanwhile, extroverts seem to favor colorful pictures that project youth, photos that make them look younger or show them with younger people, and those high on openness often skip the headshots and choose artistic photos with high aesthetic quality, according to L. Liu et al. 2016. There is still much research to be done, but early findings suggest that social media behaviors may provide some information about the personality traits of users, according to Azukar et al. 2018. Are selfie enthusiasts narcissistic? Some researchers suggest that frequent self-posting is associated with narcissism, which is characterized by a highly inflated, grandiose, and positive but unrealistic self-concept. However, the relationship may only apply to those with a certain type of narcissism and low self-esteem, according to March and McBean, 2018, page 108. So if you notice a friend posting a lot of selfies, don't jump to the conclusion that they are vain and self-absorbed. This very common activity is not necessarily indicative of narcissism, according to Barry et al. 2019, page 29. Objective tests, LO14, describe objective personality tests and evaluate their strengths and limitations. Unlike the projective tests, which tend to be open-ended and subjective, objective personality tests use a standard set of questions unlike the projective tests, which tend to be open-ended and subjective, objective personality tests use a standard set of questions with answers choices. Unlike the projective tests, which tend to be open-ended and subjective, objective personality tests use a standard set of questions Unlike the projective tests, which tend to be open-ended and subjective, objective personality tests use a standard set of questions with answer choices: true, false, multiple choice, circle the number, and have clear scoring instructions that are identical for everyone taking the test. Often the scores are calculated by a computer. These tests are called objective because the results are assessed in a standardized way and are mostly free of personal bias. In addition to being convenient, objective tests have a solid base of evidence supporting their reliability and validity, according to Anastasi and Urbina, 1997, and Atkinson et al. 2023. Some focus on a particular personality trait or characteristic, such as locus of control. Others assess a group of traits, like the Big Five. For example, the Big Five Inventory 2, BFI2, is a short assessment that is self-administered and designed to be easily understood and completed quickly, reducing testing fatigue, according to Soto and John, 2017. For a more detailed examination of the Big Five traits, clinicians often use the NEO personality inventories, according to Bleedorn, et al. 2020, and Louis et al. 2030. According to Bleedorn, et al. 2020, and Louis et al. 2018. These assessments divide the Big Five into smaller facets, according to Modis et al. 2019. The MMPI. The MMPI, the most commonly used objective personality test, is the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, MMPI-3, according to Ben Parath and Telegen, 2020, Butcher and Roos, 1996, and Williams and Lally, 2017. This self-report questionnaire consists of 338 statements with 3 answer choices: true, false, or cannot say, Examples of these statements include I often wake up rested and ready to go, and I often wake up rested and ready to go. Examples of these statements include I often wake up rested and ready to go, and I want to work as a teacher. Since the original purpose of the MMPI was to identify disorders and abnormal behavior, it included 10 clinical scales. Cynicism and antisocial behavior, for example. The assessment also has validity measures, including the lie scale and the defensiveness scale, to help determine whether test takers are trying to appear more disturbed or healthier than they really are. The MMPI is used in a variety of contexts, including employment evaluations for police and other public safety servants, according to Whitman ETAL 2021. Personality tests in the workplace. In addition to running criminal background checks and credit scores, some employers use objective personality assessments to screen job applicants. For example, police departments use assessments such as the MMPI to help predict performance on the job, according to Detrick and Chibnall 2014 and Call 2017. The 16 Personality Factor Questionnaire, 16PF, originally created by Raymond Cattell and based on his trait theory, consists of 185 questions. The results are used to construct a profile indicating where the respondent falls along the continuum for each of the 16 dimensions. According to Cattell 1973a, Figure 11.4 shows how airline pilots and writers compare on these 16 factors. Figure 11.4, example profiles generated by the 16PF. On Cattell's 16PF, writers appear to be more reserved, sensitive, and imaginative than airline pilots. Pilots, on the other hand, tend to fall on the tough-minded end of the continuum. Are you surprised that they also appear to be more relaxed? Information from Cattell, 1973b. Extended description for Figure 11.4, example profiles generated by the 16PF. A graph shows 16 personal traits on the left and right vertical axis each. The horizontal axis shows numbers ranging from 1 to 10 within 1. The horizontal axis shows numbers ranging from 1 to 10 with 1 on the left and 10 on the right, which determines the traits of writers and airline pilots. The vertical axis on the left, corresponding to 1, lists the traits as follows: 1. Reserved, 2. Concrete thinker, 3. Affected by feelings, 4. Submissive, 5. Serious, 6. Expedient, 7. Timid, 8. Tough-minded, 9. Trusting, 10. Practical, 11. Forthright, 12. Self-assured, 13. Conservative, 14. Group dependent, 15. Undisciplined, 16. Relaxed. The vertical axis on the right, corresponding to 10, lists the traits as follows: 1. Outgoing, 2. Abstract thinker, 3. Emotionally stable, 4. Dominant, 5. Happy-go-lucky, 6. Conscientious, 7. Bold, 8. Sensitive, 9. Suspicious, 10. Imaginative, 11. Shrewd, 12. Insecure, 13. Experimenting, 14. Self-sufficient, 15. Controlled, 16. Tense. The graph shows two curves plotted with respect to the points on the horizontal axis on which the numbers range from 1 to 10. The first curve represents the personal traits of airline pilots as follows: outgoing, abstract thinker, more emotionally stable, submissive, less serious, conscientious, bold, tough-minded, trusting, practical, shrewd, self-assured, conservative, self-sufficient, controlled, and relaxed. The second curve represents the personal traits of writers are as follows: reserved, more abstract thinker, emotionally stable, dominant, serious, expedient, bold, sensitive, suspicious, more imaginative, forthright, self-assured, experimenting, self-sufficient, less controlled, and tense. Myers-Briggs. Myers-Briggs. One very popular objective personality assessment is the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, MBTI, according to Briggs and Myers, 1998. Catherine Briggs and her daughter Isabel Briggs Myers created this assessment in the 1940s. It designates a personality type using these 4 dimensions: extroversion E versus introversion I, sensing S versus intuiting N, thinking T versus feeling F, and judgment J versus perception P. For example, someone characterized as ISTP would be introverted, rely on these senses rather than intuition to understand that environment, favor logic over emotion, and focus on using perception as opposed to judgment. One problem with the MBTI is that it uses relatively vague descriptions and personality traits. Some would even liken it to the Barnum effect, which was named after P.T. Barnum, 1810 through 1891, the U.S. showman and founder of the Barnum and Bailey Circus. Barnum was famous for his ability to convince people he could read minds. Especially, he did this by making generally complimentary and vague statements that could be true about anyone. You are creative and work well with others, and you sometimes procrastinate, but ultimately you get the job done. The MBTI is similar in this respect, as it describes all personality orientations as uniquely positive, according to Lake ETAL 2019, page 104. Although the MBTI is quite popular, especially in the corporate world, the supporting research is weak when it comes to job performance, career choices, and other professional matters, according to Chen 2018, Lussier 2018, and Pittinger 2005. Because test results don't always correlate with job success, the validity of the MBTI is questionable. This assessment can also fall short when it comes to retest reliability. A person may take the test twice and end up with different results, according to Huntsley, ETAL 2003, and Pittinger 2005. After weighing the evidence, one group of researchers arrived at the following conclusion. Despite its popularity, the MBTI theory does not represent a suitable framework for understanding personality, according to Stein and Swan 2019, page 8. Objective personality tests. What's the takeaway? We have noted specific criticisms of the MMPI and Myers-Briggs tests, but objective assessments have other more general drawbacks. Many of these tests include some sort of mechanism for checking the validity of the test taker's answers, according to Wetzel ETAL 2021, but people still may lie, particularly when something personal is at stake like a job. Many of these tests include some sort of mechanism for checking the validity of the test taker's answers, according to Wetzel ETAL 2021, but people still may lie, particularly when something personal is at stake like a job or child custody decision. Social desirability can also influence the results, as test takers may unintentionally answer questions in a way that makes them look better to others, even if the test takers try to be honest. Self-reports are inevitably biased. Can anyone truly perceive themselves objectively? Finally, the standardization of these tests may come at a cost, as they have been criticized for lacking flexibility and failing to appreciate the diversity of individual experience. Despite many criticisms, objective tests represent a major success story within psychology, according to Watson 2023, page 401. Sean Saifa Wall. To learn more about Saifa, his activism, art, and other projects, visit https://www.seansaifa.com. Authentic and dishonest. You may be wondering why we choose to feature the story of an intersex man in this chapter on personality. Wouldn't Sean Saifa Wall be a better fit for the sexuality and gender chapter? We don't believe that people with intersex traits should be confined to discussions of sex and gender. We chose to include Saifa's story here because we were captivated by him and his rare ability to reflect on his personality development in an authentic and honest way. Show what you know. Question number 1. Blank personality tests present ambiguous stimuli to the test taker. The administrator interprets the responses to uncover underlying personality characteristics. Is the answer A, objective, B, projective, C, 16PF, or D, Myers-Briggs? The answer is B, projective. Projective personality tests present ambiguous stimuli to the test taker. The administrator interprets the responses to uncover underlying personality characteristics. Question number 2. A psychologist gives a client several personality tests to help them choose a career path. What might be the consequences if the tests are not valid? How would the client know if the tests were reliable? Answers will vary, but can be based on the following definitions. A valid measure is one that can be shown to measure what it intends to measure. If a measure is not valid, a client might be given information that is not meaningful because the findings have not been shown to measure their intended topic. A reliable measure provides consistent results across time as well as across raters or people scoring the measure. If findings from a personality test are not reliable, a client may be given information that will not reflect a consistent pattern or may be questionable due to problems with scoring. Question number 3. Critics of objective personality tests report that of these tests does not allow for flexibility and fails to consider the diversity of individual experiences. Is the answer A, standardization, B, extroversion, C, neuroticism, or D, factor analysis? The answer is A, standardization. Critics of objective personality tests report that the standardization of these tests does not allow for flexibility and fails to consider the diversity of individual experiences. Chapter 11, Review, Summary of Concepts. LO1, Define Personality. Personality refers to the unique core set of characteristics that influence the way one thinks, acts, and feels. Characteristics many psychologists would agree are consistent and enduring thought. Personality refers to the unique core set of characteristics that influence the way one thinks, acts, and feels. Characteristics many psychologists would agree are consistent and enduring throughout the lifespan. LO2 distinguish how the perspective LO2 describe LO2 distinguish how the perspectives of psychology explain personality development. The psychoanalytic perspective suggests that personality development is strongly influenced by early childhood experiences and unconscious conflicts, many of which are sexual or aggressive in nature. The humanistic perspective suggests that humans are innately good and in control of their destinies, and these positive aspects of human nature drive the development of personality. The behavioral perspective explains how reinforcement and other learning processes shape personality. The social cognitive perspective suggests that personality is shaped by an interaction of environmental factors, cognitive activity, and behaviors. Trait theories are primarily concerned with describing personality and predicting behavior. LO3 illustrate Freud's models for describing the mind. Psychoanalysis refers to Freud's theories of personality and his system of psychotherapy and tools for exploring the unconscious. According to his topographical model, our personalities and behaviors result from mental processes occurring at 3 levels: the conscious, preconscious, and unconscious. Freud's structural model describes the functions of the mind components. Freud's structural model describes the functions of the mind's components. The ID is the most primitive component, and its activities occur at the unconscious level. As an infant grows, the ego develops from the ID. The ego manipulates situations, creates plans, solves problems, and makes decisions to satisfy the needs of the ID. The superego develops last and guides our behavior to follow the rules of society, parents, or other authority figures. LO4 summarizes Freud's use of psychosexual stages to explain personality. According to Freud, the development of sexuality and personality proceeds through psychosexual stages, which all children experience as they mature into adulthood. Each psychosocial stage is associated with an erogenous zone and a conflict that must be addressed. If the conflict is not successfully resolved, the child may develop a fixation and get stuck in that particular stage, unable to progress smoothly through the remaining stages. The progression includes the oral stage, anal stage, phallic stage, latency period, and genital stage. LO5 explained how the Neo-Freudian theories of personality differ from Freud's. Some of Freud's followers disagreed with his intense emphasis on early childhood experiences, aggression, and sexuality, and developed their own theories. Adler proposed that humans are conscious and intentional in their behaviors. Jung suggested that we are driven by a psychological energy as opposed to sexual energy that encourages positive growth, self-understanding, and balance. Horney emphasized the role of relationships between children and their caregivers, not psychosocial. Horney emphasized the role of relationships between children and their caregivers, not psychosexual stages and erogenous zones. LO6 discussed Rogers' view of self-concept, ideal self, and unconditional positive regard. Rogers suggested that humans have an innate urge to move towards situations and people that provide opportunities for growth and move away from those that inhibit growth. Self-concept is knowledge of one's strengths, abilities, behavior patterns, and temperament. Rogers believed that individuals develop an ideal self or self-concept they fervently wish to achieve. Ideally, caregivers show unconditional positive regard or total acceptance of children regardless of their behavior. People need to feel completely accepted and valued for who they are, not for what they do. LO7 used the behavioral perspective to explain personality development. According to the behavioral perspective, personality is a collection of behaviors, all of which have been shaped through a lifetime of learning. Some behaviorists explain personality using learning principles, including those of operant conditioning and observational learning. LO8 summarized Rotter's view of personality. Rotter suggested that some aspects of personality cannot be directly observed. He believed a key component of personality is locus of control, or a pattern of beliefs about where control or responsibility for outcomes resides. Rotter explored how these beliefs can influence behavior. Expectancy refers to the predictions we make about the consequences or outcomes of our behaviors. LO9 discussed Bandura's social cognitive perspective of personality. Bandura rejected the notion that psychologists should focus solely on observable behavior. He realized behavior is determined by cognition as well as reinforcers and other environmental influences. The social cognitive perspective suggests that personality results from reinforcement, relationships, and other environmental factors, social and patterns of thinking cognitive. Bandura refers to the multidirectional interaction among beliefs, behaviors, and the environment as reciprocal determinism. LO10 distinguished trait theories from other personality theories. Traits are the relatively stable properties that describe elements of personality. The trait theories are different from other personality theories in that they focus less on explaining why and how personality develops and more on describing personality and predicting behaviors. Allport created a comprehensive list of traits to help operationalize the terminology used in personality research. Cattell grouped the traits into two categories, surface traits and source traits. He used factor analysis to uncover the relationships among surface traits, resulting in 16 personality factors, and developed the 16 personality factor questionnaire, 16PF, to measure them. Eysenck proposed that personality can be described using three dimensions: introversion, extroversion, neuroticism, and psychoticism. He also worked to understand the biological basis of these dimensions. LO11 identify evidence supporting the biological basis of the five-factor model of personality. The five-factor model of personality, also known as the Big Five, includes the following factors: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. These characteristics are stable over time and are shaped by genes, brain structures, and other biological factors, not just culture and experience. LO12 explain why reliability and validity are important in personality assessments. Reliability generally refers to two aspects of a personality assessment: test-retest reliability and iterator reliability. Test-retest reliability is consistency of results when the same person takes a test more than once. Iterator reliability refers to the consistency across people scoring an assessment. Validity is the degree to which an assessment measures what it is intended to measure. A valid test must yield results similar to established assessments. LO13 describe projective personality tests and evaluate their strengths and limitations. Projective tests are based on the premise that personality influences perceptions. The test taker is presented with an ambiguous stimulus and then prompted to project meaning onto it. The administrator takes the manifest content, what the person reports seeing, and tries to understand its underlying meaning. Because these tests attempt to gather information indirectly, they are less threatening than other methods, and therefore provoke less resistance. Projective tests are time-consuming, and the process of scoring and interpreting their results is somewhat subjective, which can lead to problems with reliability and validity. Some of the best-known projective tests are the Rorschach ink block. Some of the best-known projective tests are the Rorschach ink block. Some of the best-known projective tests are the Rorschach ink blot test and the Thematic Apperception Test, TAT. LO14 describe objective personality tests and evaluate their strengths and limitations. Objective personality tests comprise a standard set of questions with answer choices: true, false, multiple choice, circle the number. These tests are called objective because the results are assessed in a standardized way and mostly free of bias, but these assessments are not perfect. Test takers may be dishonest or unintentionally answer questions in a way that makes them look better. Social desirability. Two commonly used objective personality tests are the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory, MMPI-3, and the 16 Personality Factor Questionnaire, 16PF. Key terms: archetypes, collective unconscious, ego defense mechanisms, expectancy, 5-factor model of personality, fixation, ID, ideal self, Oedipus complex, personality, pleasure principle, projective personality tests, psychoanalysis, psychosexual stages, reality principle, reciprocal determinism, self-concept, self-efficacy, social cognitive perspective, source traits, superego, surface traits, trait theories, unconditional positive regard, unconscious. Chapter 12.